Warrior Lore. Chapter 38-23. Along the way, the group obviously sped up. Apart from the rest time, they traveled day and night. Fortunately, the exotic beasts had enough stamina and could adapt to this pace. Oli, on the other hand, was unhappy and grumbled a little. However, Zichen naturally had Tu Yin and Bu Zue Xian to deal with him. 2 days later, a group of people flew past them. It was obvious that they were hurrying on with their journey. Zichun was envious. He had warned Oli several times, but the other party always said that they were in no hurry. If they traveled day and night at this speed, they would save a lot of time. There weren't many people in that group, only a dozen or so. Less than an hour after they overtook Zichen's group, they suddenly turned back and retreated. The leader of the group was a young man. He was riding on a majestic and somewhat peculiar exotic beast, and he was heading towards them. Oli, who was walking in front, immediately slowed down. He looked into the distance and saw the approaching young man. Sensing the unfriendly aura coming from the other party, he said with a smile, "There's wine to drink again. Let's stop and rest for a while." Thus, the group stopped just like that. Oli's hand reached out of the shaft of the carriage. Usually, at this time, Zichen, who was following closely behind, would throw a bottle of wine over. However, there was nothing this time. Oli stood up in confusion and looked at Zichen. Zichen was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. "It's noon now. Why are you stopping? Drinking wine? Why don't you go drink piss?" At this time, the young man had already approached with his group. He rode on a tall exotic beast and looked down at Oli in front, saying, "Are you going to the sacred mountain too?" Zichen recognized the other party's voice. It was the voice he heard at Bu Zue restaurant yesterday. He frowned slightly, not knowing what the other party meant. "Little brother, you're right. You have a good eye." Oli gave a thumbs up and praised. "Who's your little brother? Watch your words when speaking to my young master." A middle-aged man behind the young man, who was obviously a guard, said coldly. At this time, Pang Chong had already stuck his head out and looked ahead. The young man said indifferently, "Go back immediately and I can spare your lives. Otherwise, you'll die." Pang Chang's eyes flickered coldly. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Oli nodded and said, "All right, watch carefully. I'll turn around now." A disdainful smile appeared on the young man's face. "Do you think trash like you deserve to go to the sacred mountain?" Oli suddenly stopped what he was doing and said with a bitter face, "This handsome young man, I'm really sorry, but what you say doesn't count." "What did you say?" The young man's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. "Little brother, it's not up to you to decide. It's up to my lord to decide whether to return or not." Oli pointed behind and said, "My lord is in the carriage behind us." "Oh, it's the coachman. There are 3 peerless beauties in the carriage. He said he would protect them all the way to the sacred mountain." Pang Chong looked at Oli, who was beside him. He had never seen through this existence before, and now, his performance was a little too lacking. "Beauty? Flower protector? Humph. Tell him to scram immediately and leave the beauty behind." The young man snorted. Oli said, "I'm afraid that won't do. My lord paid me to lead the way. How can I tell him to scram? Why don't you go and reason with him? If he agrees, I'll leave immediately." Pang Chong couldn't bear to listen anymore. He immediately walked out of the carriage and began to release his aura. The moment the aura of the human soul stage was released, the expressions of the people in front changed, but that was all. "Everyone, the path is here. Anyone can take it. Why can't we pass?" Pang Chong stood in front of the carriage with a domineering aura. The young man glanced at Pang Chong, then waved his hand and said, "Teach him how to behave properly." With that, he ignored Pang Chong and walked towards Zichun at the back. Zichun glared at the other party coldly. Right now, he was filled with anger. "Kid, scram immediately and leave the beauty in the carriage." Hearing the young man's words, Zichun wanted to beat him up. At this moment, a cry of surprise came from behind. A sharp sword aura soared into the sky, and the 3 human soul stage cultivators immediately retreated until they were thousands of feet away. Fear was written all over their faces. Pang Chang's body rose into the air, and the soul sword in his hand released a strong light. The second sword slashed out. A white mark appeared between heaven and earth, as if the entire space was about to be cut open. The remaining people immediately retreated. After the two sword slashes, everyone except the young man retreated thousands of feet away. Among them, there were 4 human soul stage cultivators, and the rest were soul stage cultivators. Clearly, they were a force to be reckoned with. "You're courting death." The young man who wanted to cause trouble for Zichen flew into a rage and immediately charged towards Pangchong. Zichen stood in front of the carriage, and the anger on his face dissipated a little. Pangchong was still the reliable one. Oli was simply inhuman. Apart from exploiting him, he didn't know how to do anything. Pangchong struck again. The third sword. Back when he fought the Blood Crow King, he only struck twice, but the power of those 2 strikes was much stronger than before. It was a matter of life and death. Although the third sword was powerful, only had the intention to repel and not kill. It was clearly not Pangchong's character to kill without a word. However, this time, the young man did not retreat. Instead, he charged forward, prepared to take the sword head-on. The exotic beast he was riding suddenly lit up, and its front paws immediately became crystal clear, like a piece of jade, blocking in front of him. With a loud bang, the sword chi was blocked by the mutated beast, and the young man's figure soared into the sky, charging towards Pangchong, who was approaching. As he moved forward, he formed a seal with his hands, and a light seal appeared in front of him in all directions with a heavy aura. After the sword light was blocked, Pangchong's expression did not change, and he struck for the 4th time. Buzz! The void trembled, and the sword light illuminated the world. Then, there was another boom. Pangchong retreated a full 1,000 feet, his face a little pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Meanwhile, the young man stood in the air, looking at him indifferently. The mutated beast stood beside him. After blocking Pangchong's attack previously, it did not suffer any damage. Oli, who was originally indifferent and waiting to watch a good show, raised his head and glanced at the mutated beast with a strange look in his eyes. Even Old Tang raised his eyelids, sizing up the exotic beast a little more. The expressions of Zichen and those who saw this scene through the curtain changed slightly. They had seen Pangchong's combat strength with their own eyes. Even if the power of the sword was restrained, it was still extremely powerful. However, it was blocked by a mutated beast mount. Moreover, it was unscathed. Obviously, this mutated beast was very extraordinary. At the very least, its physical strength had surpassed most people in the human soul realm. Pangchong was also very surprised by his opponent's strength. In his opinion, this young man must be a good-for-nothing from an aristocratic family. He did not expect him to have such strength. After just one exchange, he had already suffered light injuries. However, he was obviously not defeated. He took a step forward, and the void trembled, and a powerful aura surged out from his body. "Try taking another sword strike of mine." The long sword in his hand trembled, and with a sword hum, an unparalleled sword chi shot out from the sword. Pangchong stabbed forward with his sword. This time, he had used all his strength. Obviously, he did not dare to underestimate his opponent. Unexpectedly, the young man still did not move in the face of this sword strike. The mutated beast moved forward. This time, the mutated beast let out a furious roar, and its body immediately became incomparably huge, like a giant beast. This time, its entire body turned into jade. From afar, it looked like a jade statue, mighty and ferocious. As the claw fell, the space seemed to be torn apart, and a sharp whistle sounded. There was a bang. The sword chi shattered, but the mutated beast did not slow down. It charged directly at Pangchong and clawed at him again. Pangchong blocked with his sword. Clang! The sharp claw landed on the long sword, and with a clang, Pangchong was directly sent flying. More blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "Lie down." Suddenly, the young man's voice sounded in Pangchong's ear, but he had unknowingly appeared beside him. With another bang, Pangchong's body smashed into the ground. After landing, Pangchong coughed up blood and his face turned pale. Defeated, Oli slapped his forehead and said, "You're too pitiful. You stood up for others, but they didn't appreciate your kindness. Look, you've been beaten up so badly, but they're still watching the show." It was obvious that he was scolding indirectly. Zichun was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He could not wait to go up and beat Oli up. Ever since they set off, this guy seemed to have taken the wrong medicine. He was unwilling to hurry along and caused a lot of trouble. Are you going to get lost? If you don't, this will be your fate. The young man did not immediately kill him. Instead, he looked at Zichun and said indifferently, I'll F * King get lost. Zichun was really angry. It was one thing for Oli to cause trouble here, but who do you think you are? How dare you cause trouble here? Whoosh! Zichun's figure soared into the sky, and the aura of the human soul realm erupted. Sensing the aura of the other party, the young man said disdainfully, You're not even as good as that guy who defeated you in one move. Zichun rushed forward, gradually releasing his aura. Suddenly, a heavy aura came from the front. It was the exotic beast that blocked in front of him. Its sharp claws whistled down, bringing with it a strong whistling sound. Get lost! Zichun shouted angrily, and his eyes were extremely cold. Oli chuckled and picked his ear, saying, There's no such move in the martial arts. In front of Zichun, a brilliance flowed and turned into a light shield. The light Dunley immediately became solid and blocked in front of him. At the same time, he clenched his right fist. Countless streaks of soul power gathered on his right fist, and lightning flashed. The exotic beast's attack landed on the light shield. The light shield trembled slightly, and in the next moment, it shattered. The young man nodded with satisfaction. His exotic beast was the key to going to the sacred mountain. It had no problem suppressing a human soul realm cultivator. First, it broke the defense, then it was defeated. The young man's idea was excellent, but the reality was cruel. Before its attack landed, Zichun's fist had already arrived. The small fist exploded with great power. It was as if thunder had exploded in front of him. With a loud boom, countless lightning snakes danced in the air. The exotic beast that was as huge as a mountain flew into the distance. It was actually sent flying by a punch. Chapter 38:24. Time seemed to stop for a moment. The smile on the young man's face froze and his eyes widened. His emerald-eyed jade fire beast was sent flying just like that? And it was sent flying with a single punch? Even Oli, who was watching the show, was stunned. He naturally wasn't worried about Zichun, but he didn't expect Zichun to be able to send that big guy flying with a single punch without using a soul weapon. But when he saw Zichun's reddened fist, he was relieved. It seemed that the pain wasn't light. Speaking of which, it was already a miracle that he didn't break his bones on the spot. After sending that mutated beast flying, Zichun stared at the young man and said indifferently, Are you going to scram on your own? Or do you want me to help you? You're courting death. The young man flew into a rage. His hands formed seals again, and the four-direction seal appeared again and smashed towards Zichun. Zichun retracted his right fist. This time, he changed to his left fist. Another punch came crashing down. With a loud bang, the four-direction seal shattered. Zichun didn't slow down at all. He arrived in front of the young man in an instant and smashed down with another punch. Countless bolts of lightning bloomed on his fist, dazzling everyone's eyes. Seeing his attack being shattered so easily, the young man's pupils shrank. His opponent's strength had exceeded his expectations. But he wasn't willing to be outdone. His body lit up, and the image of a beast appeared behind him. His strength had clearly increased by a lot. He punched out, clearly intending to meet Zichun head-on. Oli shook his head and curled his lips. Even if you're a spoiled brat, shouldn't you at least have some self-awareness? What is this? When the others saw this scene, they weren't worried at all. Although the young man's aura was extraordinary, compared to Zichun, the difference wasn't small at all. In the sky, two explosions sounded, and countless bolts of lightning scattered in all directions. In just two punches, the young man was sent flying, coughing up blood. Those who had retreated far away all rushed forward, wanting to protect their young master. In the end, Zichun delivered another punch to each of them. His punches were both light and heavy, but they were just right. Everyone was sent flying, but no one died. None of them were fools. After spitting out blood, they acted as if they were seriously injured and didn't dare to come forward again. The other party clearly didn't have the intention to kill him. If he insisted on pestering the other party, not only would he be humiliated, the other party might even kill him if he lost his patience. They knew that their young master was very likely to be chosen by the sage Heavenly Mirror, which was why he had entered the sacred mountain. However, where did these people come from? How could they be so powerful? After being defeated in 2 punches, the young man was so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. With a face full of anger, he coldly said to Zichun, "Eat him." Behind them, a roar shook the heavens. That strange beast came again. Although it was sent flying by Zichun's punch, it wasn't injured and its momentum was still fierce. Zichun had seen how strong his opponent was, so he decided not to use his fists anymore. That was because its body was too hard. If he punched it a few times, the rebound force would be too much for him to handle. With a flash of light, a shield shining with lightning appeared in his left hand, and a lightning rod appeared in his right hand. The shield in his left hand and the staff in his right. Block and attack. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, there was a thunderous explosion as the man and the beast fought fiercely. The exotic beast's strength was extremely strong. Every time it attacked, the shield in Zichun's left hand would tremble violently and be on the verge of collapsing. However, Zichun would follow up with a strike of his staff and repel the exotic beast. The young man's subordinates, who were pretending to be seriously injured, stared at the battle in the sky with their eyes wide open. They were completely evenly matched, and there was no clear winner. Is this guy still human? The young man's eyes widened as well. The emerald-eyed jade fire beast was his greatest trump card, and also the reason why he could enter the sacred mountains. Apart from its powerful physical body, its battle prowess was unparalleled. He never thought that it would be evenly matched with a random human soul he encountered on the side of the road. At this moment, the strange beast's entire body was like jade. The strength it displayed was becoming increasingly tyrannical. As for Zichun, he could only fight to a draw with the strange beast using combat techniques. It was impossible for him to defeat the strange beast because the strange beast's body was too strong. Bang! Bang! With 2 loud vibrations, the shield and rod shattered and the energy dissipated. Zichun retreated. A smile appeared on the young man's face. Compared to the blue-eyed jade fire beast, a human's physical body was ultimately his weakness, and so was his endurance. The blue-eyed jade fire beast, who thought it had gained the upper hand, moved forward again and swung its jade-like claws at Zichun's head. Pa! A long black rod blocked in front of it. This time, the rod didn't shatter, because it was a real soul weapon and it had a great background. In the next moment, the long rod lit up with rays of light, and the complicated patterns on it lit up as well. A powerful force emerged from it and forced the blue-eyed jade fire beast to retreat. Looking at the retreating opponent, Zichun smiled coldly. With a flash of his body, he followed up and struck down with his staff again. The long rod whizzed down and hit the head of the blue-eyed jade fire beast. The strange beast let out a painful roar and retreated in the air. Zichun continued to follow up, striking again and again with his rod. In the sky, the thunderous roars and lightning raged, and the blue-eyed jade fire beast was forced to retreat. With the Saint Spirit weapon and Zichun's powerful combat strength, there was no longer any suspense in this battle. One strike after another. The unique vibrating force of the fighting technique was transmitted into the blue-eyed jade fire beast's body, causing it to sway in the air. It couldn't even stand steadily. As for counterattacking, it was impossible. The young man's face immediately darkened. Obviously, he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. Just as his expression changed and he was thinking about how to deal with this, he heard Zichun's cold voice. Either die or scram. The young man hesitated for a moment, but at this moment, a ruthless killing intent emerged. Let's go. He was also very decisive. He turned around and left, flying into the distance. As for the blue-eyed jade fire beast, he couldn't care less about it. The others immediately followed and fled at an extremely fast speed. Obviously, they were worried that they would lose their lives here if they were too slow. Everyone ran away, leaving only the strange beast behind. At this moment, the jade-like light on its body was flickering, and it could be beaten back to its original form at any time. Zichen looked at the strange beast and said indifferently, I can give you a chance to live. Submit or die. Without giving the strange beast time to think, Zichen's left hand manifested an energy rod and the two merged together. A violent aura was emitted from the Saint Spirit weapon. This was an attack that could kill the Blood Crow King. Zichen glanced at the blue-eyed jade fire beast, and the rod in his hand suddenly fell, leaving a clear rod mark in the air. With the threat of death, the blue-eyed jade fire beast's eyes were filled with fear. The rod fell, and death approached. The struggle in the blue-eyed jade fire beast's eyes disappeared. Its body swayed and returned to its original form. The jade-like light on its body also disappeared. Then, its front legs went soft and it crawled in the air, showing a submissive posture. Life and death is up to fate. The descending rod's aura turned from violent to extremely calm. It hovered above the blue-eyed jade fire beast's head, motionless. A strong gust of wind whistled down and pressed the blue-eyed jade fire beast's body downwards. However, there was no longer the threat of death until its body landed on the ground. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Zichen's killing intent was too obvious, causing everyone to suspect that Zichen never intended to let it go. The blue-eyed jade fire beast slowly raised its head and looked at Zichen with fear in its eyes. Zichen looked at it and said, Welcome to our team. Actually, you made the right choice because no matter what danger we face, we will not abandon our companions. The blue-eyed jade fire beast's eyes flickered. Zichen said, Of course, you are not a companion yet. You are just a member of the team. Then, Zichen's figure landed. He looked at Oli, who was lazily leaning against the carriage, and said, Let's continue on our way. Oli picked his ears and did not continue to bargain. He immediately drove the carriage and continued on. Zichen, on the other hand, returned to the carriage and became the coachman again. After a slight hesitation, the blue-eyed jade fire beast followed, but it stayed by Zichen's side. In the previous battle, Zichen had displayed a great deal of strength, but he had not been able to truly injure it. Of course, this was also because the staff had not landed on it at the end. Otherwise, it would have really died. As an exotic beast that could suppress a human soul expert, its intelligence was naturally extremely high. When its original owner decisively abandoned it, its mind had changed. For the rest of the journey, they did not encounter any more ignorant existences. They did not even encounter the young man who had fled before. It seemed that he had already rushed to the sacred mountain at full speed. At night, they finally had time to rest. Oli stretched out his hand. Zichen unhappily threw a jar of Undrunk Immortal to him. Undrunk Immortal is a really good wine. When we pass by the next city, try to buy a few hundred jars. Oli said with a smile, otherwise, we won't be able to drink it. Didn't you say that there's only one Undrunk restaurant? Zichen looked at Oli. Oli patted his head and said, Look at my memory. It's really bad. I remember that one year, Undrunk restaurant opened a branch. I just don't know if it's closed. Of course, if it's closed, just pretend I didn't say anything. Zichen ignored this fellow because he was afraid that he would not be able to resist beating him up. If he only used martial arts, Zichen did not have the confidence to defeat him. Noah had already lit the bonfire. When Oli walked towards the bonfire, he turned back to look at the blue-eyed jade fire beast and said, Watch the three of them. He was referring to the three strange beasts that were pulling the carriage. The blue-eyed jade fire beast lay to the side, motionless. The other three strange beasts did not dare to move either. The pressure of a superior made them obey all the orders of the blue-eyed jade fire beast unconditionally. The bonfire burned as the few of them sat together and chatted. Chapter 38:25. Zichen did not even bat an eyelid at the approaching hostile aura. The others' expressions did not change much either. Oli chuckled and said, It's really lively today. Why don't we have another jar? Zichen did not even look at Oli because he was afraid that he would not be able to hold himself back and attack Oli before they even started fighting. A dozen people appeared in the sky. They stood in the air, and the leader said indifferently, Even thieves have morals. We only want money, not lives. Take out all the valuable items you have, and we can spare your lives. Don't worry, the Shishan brothers are famous for being righteous in this area. At this moment, The person beside him poked his arm and signaled to the leader with his eyes. The leader looked around and saw the three women on the other side of the bonfire. His eyes lit up and he said, "Other than the money, the women must be left behind too. Don't worry, the Shishan brothers will keep their word." The others let out strange laughter as they sized up the three women. Their eyes were burning with passion. The leader continued, "Don't worry, three beauties. We are only inviting you back as guests and have no other intentions. As long as you are obedient, you will enjoy endless glory and wealth in the future." Oli raised his head and looked at the scene with interest. Clearly, he only wanted to watch the show and did not care about anything else. Lon Gumming and the others did not even bother with the other party. "Hey, what's the meaning of this? Are you really not taking the Shishan brothers seriously?" The leader's face showed a hint of anger. The others did not move. As a latecomer, Pang Chong felt a little apologetic and looked at Zichun. Zichun said softly, "You deal with it as you see fit." Pang Chong rose into the air and released the aura of the human soul realm. The leader smiled and said, "Interesting, but a human soul realm cultivator can't take a beating." Pang Chong ignored him and drew his sword. The sword light flew in another direction, and several ripples appeared there. A man who looked very similar to the leader appeared and blocked the sword with a saber. As for the leader from before, his face revealed a look of astonishment. He had embarrassed himself during the day, and if he embarrassed himself again at night, Pang Chong felt that he would not have the face to continue staying in this group. Therefore, he drew his sword with all his strength. Wong. His sword was unsheathed, and a sharp sword chi left a mark in the air, heading straight for a human soul realm cultivator. Feeling the power contained in the sword chi, the other party's expression changed, and he immediately retreated. Clearly, he did not dare to take this sword head-on. Then, Pang Chong slashed out a second time, and the others retreated. After retreating for nearly 1,000 feet, the leader said indifferently, "I wonder which mountain this hero came from. I hope you can leave your name." Pang Jie snorted coldly and said, "What? You want to settle the score now?" However, before the two brothers could speak, Zichun said, "If you don't want to die too miserably, I advise you to disperse. Of all the things a human soul can do, why do you have to learn how to rob others?" He added a few pieces of wood to the bonfire without even raising his head. 3,000 meters away, the Shishan brothers glanced at the bonfire. Then, one of them, who was either the older or younger brother, turned around and left without hesitation. The battle came to an end just like that. Pang Cheng's figure descended from the sky. Looking at the silent group, he said somewhat awkwardly, "I saw that they didn't have any killing intent, so they didn't attack ruthlessly." Hearing this explanation, the others were slightly stunned, because they had never cared about such things. However, Oli chuckled and said, "People like you will die very quickly. It's hard to imagine how you reached the human soul realm." Zichun said, "Ignore him. It's fine as long as you have a clear conscience." Pang Chong nodded and sat to the side. If he was alone, he naturally did not need to explain too much. However, he was in the group now, so it was not good for him to make a decision that could harm everyone. "Big brother, why should we retreat? If we don't do the first job well, it will affect our reputation and the morale of our brothers." The human soul who appeared in the open, the younger brother of the Shishan brothers, said unhappily, "The one with the sword does have some skills, but we brothers aren't bad either. It shouldn't be a problem to kill him if we work together." The older brother was the one who had been hiding in the dark and was forced out by Pang Chong. He said in a deep voice, "Our battle strength is indeed impressive when we work together, but the one with the sword isn't as easy to deal with as we thought. Other than that, the others haven't moved and look so calm. Maybe there's more than one human soul realm." The older brother sighed and said, "We've gotten off to a bad start. We met an iron plate on our first try. Could it be that the heavens are deliberately warning us not to do this business? After all, even the famous Blood Crow King fell. It's said that the entire Blood Crow army died, leaving no survivors." "Big brother, what nonsense are you talking about? Where's your courage? Where's the courage we had when we set up the group? This is a test from the heavens. We can't give up." The younger brother said righteously, "Do you still remember the saying? You have to stand up from where you fell." Since we've lost face here, we'll find him here. We'll follow them in the dark until we find the right time to strike. The younger brother's eyes flashed. This is called knowing yourself and your enemy to win 100 battles. We'll know their weakness and defeat them in one fell swoop. Then, the younger brother turned around and looked at the others, asking, "What do you think?" Everyone nodded, feeling that this was the truth. All right, it's settled then. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. As Zichen's group continued on their way, they realized that there were people following them in the dark. Even Zichen felt ashamed of their clumsy tracking methods. He knew who they were without looking. None of the human souls present were weak. Naturally, they could sense the presence of those people, but none of them cared, because they weren't dangerous at all. 2 days later, the group encountered the second group of bandits. Pangjia leaped into the air like the most competent bodyguard in the group. After knocking down all the bandits, he left with a swagger. The Shishan brothers looked at the departing group and then at the group of bandits who had been defeated in the distance. Many of them were wailing in pain and despair. One of them had even lost his clothes. The look in their eyes changed. The younger brother asked, "Are they our colleagues?" Because a person had jumped down from the carriage and used practiced movements and techniques to rob everyone clean, even including one of the bandits' robes, which were obviously defensive soul weapons. This made the younger brother mutter, "Who is this person? If he's really their colleague, what should we do?" Unexpectedly, at this moment, the elder brother's eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "Whether he's our colleague or not, we've struck gold this time." Struck gold? The younger brother was stunned. The others were also puzzled. The elder brother said, "Are you stupid? Think about it. What's their goal? They want to rob everyone, just like a mantis stalking a cicada, and we're the oriole hiding in the dark. After they rob all the bandits on this path, we'll destroy them. Isn't it the same as taking all the wealth on this path effortlessly?" Hearing the elder brother's words, the younger brother's eyes lit up. He immediately gave a thumbs up and said, "Elder brother, you're wise." The elder brother said proudly, "Otherwise, I'd be the leader of this group." Chapter 38:26. Zichen didn't know that he was being targeted once again. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. He glanced at the robe that Noah took off. The grade wasn't very high, and it was much worse than the Blood Crow King's. However, this kind of thing was rare. Once they reached the next city, they would definitely be able to sell it for a good price. The blue-eyed jade fire beast had been following beside Zichun, but it couldn't understand some of its new master's actions. After listening to the conversations over the past few days, it knew everyone's names one by one. The one called Oli was a troublemaker. In human terms, he deserved a beating. The new master almost couldn't suppress his anger several times, but he never made a move. After seeing its new master's strength, it couldn't help but wonder if this Oli was even stronger than its new master. In addition, there was another old man called Old Tang. He didn't seem to have any strength, but every time it slowed down and was about to reach the carriage behind, an instinctive fear would arise in its heart. Having lost his greatest reliance, entering the sacred mountain again was a huge joke for Chen Kai. Without the blue-eyed jade fire beast, the sacred mountain wouldn't care who he was. Therefore, he had to seek help. Not to mention what to do to the enemy. At the very least, he had to snatch back his blue-eyed jade fire beast. His original intention was to reach the sacred mountain and find a friend to ask for help. He didn't expect to meet a friend in less than 8 days. Yu-E, a genius from the Yu family. He was an existence that would definitely be recognized by the sacred mountain. After seeing Chen Kai, he was a little surprised. To be able to meet on the road ahead was also a kind of fate. However, he quickly noticed that the blue-eyed jade fire beast that had been following Chen Kai was not by his side. "Brother Yu, please help me." Chen Kai didn't hold back. He directly stated his intention and his current situation. Hearing Chen Kai's words, Yu's expression changed slightly. He was very surprised. "There's no one else from your family?" Speaking of this, Chen Kai was a little regretful. His family had arranged for experts to protect him, but he was in a hurry to come and didn't wait for them. He left without saying goodbye. But now, he didn't dare to go back the way he came, so he could only brace himself and move forward. In Yui's group, there were more than 10 people. Some were in charge of his daily life, and some were guards. Among them, there was an old man wearing a black robe. He was very tall and very conspicuous. In addition to the old man, there was also a handsome young man standing beside the old man. He was chatting with the old man about something. Yui looked back at the old man and asked, "Uncle Go, what do you think of this?" The tall old man turned around and said, "It's all up to the young master." Chun-Kai hurriedly begged, "Brother Yu, please help me. I will definitely not forget your kindness." Yui hugged Chun-Kai's shoulder and said, "What are you talking about? You and I are brothers. Why are we still talking about this?" Then, Yui said, "Come, let me introduce you to my other good friend." Lei Chan, the young man named Lei Chan, walked towards them. Yui smiled and said, "He's the son of the Jinyuan Chen family, Chun-Kai. He's also my best brother." Lei Chan smiled at Chun-Kai and nodded. This was how the two of them got to know each other. Yui said, "Shall the three of us go and have a look? Let's see who dares to snatch young Master Chun-Kai's things." Lei Chan said lightly, "Of course we have to go, but if only the three of us go, I'm afraid we will be defeated." Yui asked in confusion, "What do you mean, Brother Lei? Can't the three of us deal with a few people in the human soul realm?" Lei Chan shook his head and said, "We are not afraid of them, but what if there is something wrong with that old man? Right now, those who are walking on this path are not easy to deal with. No matter how extraordinary we are, in front of an absolute realm, we will feel powerless." Yui obviously understood what Lei Chan meant and nodded. This was not impossible. However, if Uncle Go followed them, it would obviously affect the progress of the team. The sage Heavenly Mirror was very famous, but it was also famous for its strange character. In order to help Chun-Kai, what if they missed the opportunity? Yui was a little embarrassed. Chun-Kai, on the other hand, was anxious and looked at Lei Chan with some dissatisfaction. Lei Chan said, "How about this? Their goal is to go to the holy mountain after all. Let's slow down and wait for them to catch up. At that time, with Uncle Go holding the line, it won't be too late for us to take action." Yui looked at Chun-Kai apologetically. Chun-Kai said, "That's fine, but what if they walk very slowly?" Lei Chan said with a smile, "No one who can get the news in advance and come to the holy mountain is a fool. No one is willing to miss such an opportunity. Moreover, as long as we wait, I believe that Brother Chin's family should also be here. At that time, with the strong joining forces, even if no accidents happen, Brother Chin can even ask for more of what you want." Chun-Kai nodded suddenly and said, "Okay, let's do that. In addition to my blue-eyed jade fire beast, I will reserve one of the three beauties in advance." At this moment, a subordinate came to report, "Young Master, a bandit stronghold has been found ahead." Yui smiled coldly and said, "Let's go and practice." The team began to set off for the bandit stronghold. A moment later, the entire stronghold was dead silent. The smell of blood filled the air, and not a single person was left alive. Similar incidents continued to happen. Some bandits were destroyed, and some new bandits appeared, destroying one caravan after another. This path was filled with all kinds of dangers. Along the way, they would always encounter some ignorant people. When these people came looking for trouble, it was Pang Chong who dealt with them. While sparing their lives, they naturally couldn't let their wealth go. Noah, who still hadn't broken through, took on the role of a beauty and didn't let any wealth go. Sometimes, they would even deliberately take a detour and go to their base camp to see if there was anything valuable there. However, most of the time, these people's things were on their own. They just needed to clean it up. The Shishan brothers had been hiding in the dark with their dozen or so subordinates. They thought that they hid very well and were silently observing Zichen's group. The three beautiful women made them very envious. They couldn't wait to kidnap them and bring them to the mountain to make them their wives. However, the brothers thought that they were very shrewd, so they weren't in a hurry to make a move. Therefore, they passed by the next city. Zichen's group stayed in the city for a night. The Shishan brothers didn't dare to enter the city, but sent someone to follow them in the dark. When they learned that Zichen's group had bought nearly 100 jars of Drunken Immortal, they were so angry that they almost vomited blood. The older brother patted his chest, thinking that he had miscalculated. He didn't expect them to be so wasteful as to spend their blue crystal coins on such foreign things. What a waste, what a waste. The two brothers were furious, and the others were also filled with righteous indignation, as if Zichun was spending their blue crystal coins. However, after thinking about it, they decided not to make a move first. So far, only Peng Chong had made a move. The strength of the others was unknown, so they had to wait and see. After Zichun's group disappeared, the younger brother walked out from the dark and asked, "Big brother, don't you think that exotic beast looks a little familiar?" The older brother was still angry. He snorted and said, "Not only does it look familiar, I'm going to steal it. Don't worry, once we get it, it will be our shared mount." After following Zichun for half a month, they encountered another group. Chapter 38:27. On a field, two teams appeared. They were about 300 meters apart from each other. "You're too slow." A wind blew, and yellow sand danced in the air. An indifferent voice sounded from the front. It was Chun Kai. Ever since he met Yu Yi, he had stayed behind. After the team slowed down, he waited for Zichun's team to come to him. He didn't expect to wait for more than half a month. In the process of waiting, he became more and more irritable. He even suspected that Zichun had left after getting his Jade Fire Beast. Fortunately, he had waited for so long. His gaze swept past the carriage and looked at the Jade Fire Beast. One man and one beast looked at each other. Chun Kai laughed loudly and said, "Wait, I'll help you out of your misery." A complicated look appeared in the Jade Fire Beast's eyes. The friendliness it should have had when it met its original owner didn't appear. The carriage came to a stop. Lan Rue, Noah, and Peng Chong got off the carriage. Oli was still sitting there, looking ahead. He had a look of indifference, as if he was just a coachman leading the way. Yui glanced at Lei Chan, and Lei Chan turned back to look at Uncle Go. He wanted to see some changes in the other party's expression. However, he didn't see anything. This made him a little confused. He thought to himself, is it really just an ordinary team? Brat, come here and die. At this moment, Chun Kai shouted angrily. Obviously, he was aiming at Zichun. Zichun got off the carriage and walked forward. He smiled faintly and said, "What? Did you find something good again? Why are you in such a hurry to give it to me?" Chun Kai said coldly, "Don't be complacent. Today is the day you meet Yui." At this moment, Yui had finished talking with Lei Chan and was walking forward. When Lei Chan saw Zichun, his eyes couldn't help but change. He seemed a little surprised. After blinking, he was even more surprised. "It's you," he cried out involuntarily as he stared fixedly at Zichun. Zichun also noticed Lei Chan, but he did not recognize him. He had never even seen him before, not even once. This kind of situation was actually very common in the Holy Thunder clan, because Zichun was too famous. Many core disciples had seen his battle footage. After all, the bounty order back then was very famous. Even many extreme core disciples were paying attention to him. "Lei Chan, you know him?" Hearing the change in Lei Chan's tone, Yui asked in surprise. Lei Chan said, "I'd recognize him even if he turned into ashes." His eyes became extremely cold, revealing an undisguised killing intent. Yui, who had some understanding of Lei Xin, said, "Is he the mission you've been talking about?" Lei Chan emphasized, "This is a mission that must be completed." Although Chun Kai didn't know what kind of conflict there was between the two, looking at this posture, it was obvious that they were mortal enemies, which made him very happy. Although he hadn't seen Lei Chan in action, he was able to become good friends with Yui, so his battle prowess was naturally not ordinary. Zichun looked Lei Sun up and down, curled his lips and said, "Who are you?" A glint of coldness flickered in Lei Chan's eyes. "Lei Chan." Zichun's expression didn't change at all. He said casually, "Never heard of you. You must be poor, right?" Lei Chan narrowed his eyes. Killing intent surged out from him. Zichun said, "Don't even think about fighting me. I never fight poor people. So what if I win? Do I have to send you away?" Then, he pointed to Chun Kai and said, "Look at this young man. He fought with me and gave me a pet. *T. You took it away." Chun Kai was so angry that smoke was coming out of his nose. Lei Chan, who had always been calm, was livid at the moment. He could no longer keep his composure after seeing Zichun, because his mission here was to kill Zichun. As for the other fortuitous encounters, they were outside of his mission. You are courting death. The mission was still floating in his mind. When he saw Zichun, he couldn't hold back anymore. With a furious shout, Lei Chan directly attacked. This was the scene that Chen Kai wanted to see the most. Although he was delighted, he said, "Brother Lei, be careful. This guy is very cunning." In the face of absolute strength, all treachery and cunning are superfluous. Dozens of holy talismans flew out in front of him and soared into the sky. The moment they were suspended in the air, they shattered one by one. A powerful force shook the sky. Bolts of lightning fell down like chains that pierced through heaven and earth. The other end was aimed at Zichun. In the face of these attacks, Zichun was unmoved. Holy talismans also flew out in front of him, forming a huge protective shield that blocked the lightning outside. Lightning constantly surged and rippled on the surface of the shield. Seeing that his attack was blocked, a trace of surprise appeared in the furious Lei Chan's eyes. He cried out involuntarily, "You also broke through." For the descenders who came here, the soul corporeal realm to the mortal soul realm was a threshold, and a very large one at that. Not everyone could cross it. It wasn't easy for him to reach the human soul realm. He didn't expect that Zichun would also break through. What else? Zichen's lips curled into a mocking smile. It's just the human soul realm? It's not that amazing. Why are you so surprised? Oli curled his lips. If it wasn't for his help, Zichun would need at least 10 years to reach the human soul realm. In fact, Zichun was also very surprised. As a descender, the fact that Lei Chan could reach the human soul realm was enough to prove that he could smoothly become a 7-star sacred talisman master after leaving and returning to the Saint Spirit realm. This in itself was amazing. So what if you broke through? If you don't know the powerful sacred talisman arts, the human soul realm is also trash. Lei Chan's eyes were cold and filled with boundless killing intent. A sacred talisman brush appeared in his hand. Today, I'll let you experience the sacred talisman art from the first layer of the sacred mountain. Zichen's expression couldn't help but change. The sacred talisman art from the sacred mountain. Could it be that Lei Chan had already obtained the sacred mountain's approval? As Lei Chan's brush fell, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. Countless silver lights bloomed, and a silver wolf that seemed to be made of silver water appeared. Its body was as huge as a mountain, and a tyrannical aura surged around it. Looking at this silver wolf and sensing its strength, Zichun didn't feel fear. Instead, a strange look appeared in his eyes. This was the sacred talisman art from the sacred mountain? If this was counted, then what about the 2 sacred talisman arts he grasped? Did they count as well? Zichen's hand moved according to his thoughts, and the brush fell. In the sky, black clouds rolled and lightning could be seen within. Chapter 38:28. The silver wolf's aura was terrifying, and its eyes were as cold as lightning. The heavenly thunder python's body was covered in lightning. The 2 behemoths were facing each other, and their auras were equally matched. Lei Chan's expression changed once again. He looked at Zichun in disbelief. You know the holy talisman art from the sacred mountain? How does he know the holy talisman art? Chen Kai felt his mind was in a mess. The other party clearly knew the soul arts of this world. So how did he know the methods of a descender? Yu Yi's expression also changed. It seemed that the other party wasn't any weaker than Lei Chan. As expected, none of the descenders who could reach this place were ordinary. Uncle Go's expression didn't change much as he looked at the confrontation in front of him. In fact, this calmness was just an act. There was an aura locking onto him with a warning. Lan Rue and the others were very surprised. They didn't expect that the art Zichun casually obtained would be the holy talisman art from the sacred mountain. The weapon he casually obtained was also a holy soul weapon from the sacred mountain. Wasn't his luck too heaven-defying? Oli leaned against the carriage absent-mindedly. He didn't care much about the holy talisman art. If one was familiar with the sacred mountain, they would know that the things on the first floor were the most ordinary. Some insiders called them trash. Otherwise, how could it be spread out? In the distance, the Shishan brothers widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. They had already guessed that there would be a battle when the 2 sides met. Perhaps they could use this battle to understand the aura of Zichun and the others. But who would have thought that Zichun would reveal the mortal soul realm from the very beginning? Moreover, he was a descender. Descenders were extremely famous in this world. Apart from being wealthy, they were also extremely difficult to deal with. After all, they had an endless supply of holy talismans that could be casually discarded in battle. The two were in the mortal soul realm, so their hearing and knowledge were naturally extraordinary. When they sensed Zichun's strength, they also heard their conversation. That wolf and python both came from the sacred mountain's holy talisman art. While the two brothers were still in shock, the two beasts facing each other moved forward. The battle erupted. As the two clashed, Lei Chan also used other saint talismans and began to approach Zichun. When Qinkai saw this scene, he quickly warned, "Brother Lei, don't get too close. This fellow is too strange." Lei Chan did not listen to Zichun's advice. He flew up, and one saint talisman after another appeared beside him, attacking Zichun. While Zichun used the sacred talisman to block the attack, he also rushed towards the other party. Both of them had the same goal. They wanted to get close to each other first before deciding the victor. The others also watched silently, with no intention of interfering. Yui was also watching the battlefield. He wanted to know which of the two descenders was more powerful. At this moment, the sound of wings flapping suddenly came from behind him. A snow-white falcon landed on his shoulder. At that moment, Eagle's sharp gaze pierced through the battlefield and landed on Shania. He was glaring at him. "Oh?" Yu Yi's eyes were filled with surprise. "Are you sure?" The snow-white falcon nodded its head gently. "For you to sense it and value it so highly, it seems to be an extraordinary item." Yu Yi's eyes lit up. "No matter what, we must obtain it." At this moment, Zichun and Lei Chan met. A long sword appeared in Lei Chan's hand. It was clearly a soul weapon. He directly stabbed it towards Zichun's chest. This was not a soul technique, but pure strength and the unique sharpness of a soul weapon. Facing this attack, Zichun only smiled. Light flashed under his feet, and he easily dodged. Then, Zichun clenched his fist. Light shone on his fist, and lightning snakes began to wreak havoc. Chun Kai could not help but shake his head. This Lei Chan usually looked very steady. Who would have thought that he would be so reckless today? After getting close to the other party, with his identity as a descender, he could only be beaten up. Chun Kai even felt that the following scene was somewhat unbearable to watch. With a loud bang, a powerful ripple spread out, and Lei Chan was sent flying. Zichun's figure flashed, and he directly followed up. The second punch landed. Wong. The sky shook. The power of this attack was extremely strong. Lei Chan, who had not stabilized his body, was sent flying while coughing blood. Zichun's third attack did not land. Yui appeared in front of him and exchanged a palm with him. He borrowed the momentum to retreat and also brought Lei Chan behind him. Lei Chan vomited blood, but he was not seriously injured. However, his gaze towards Zichun had clearly changed. He did not expect to be defeated in one move. At this moment, the silver wolf in the sky was directly defeated after being whipped by the sky thunder python's tail. In this confrontation, whether it was strength or holy talisman technique, Lei Chan lost to Zichun. Lan Guming and the others were not surprised. Zichun's battle record was already incomparably brilliant. Dealing with a descender was naturally not a problem. Seeing that Yu Yi had made a move, Pang Chang's figure also soared into the sky and stood beside Zichun. Zichun smiled and said, "No need. I can fight two of them by myself." "You are quite confident." Yui turned to look at Lei Chan and said, "Lei Chan, you were careless this time. Let me do it." Lei Chan nodded. He originally thought that he could rely on the advantage of his soul weapon to get rid of Zichun. He did not expect that Zichun would seize the opportunity instead. Yui turned again and looked at Zichun. "Tell me, how should I kill you? If you have the ability, kill me however you want." Zichun also looked at her. Yui's gaze swept across the few people below and smiled. "What's the point of fighting and killing? Why don't we make a bet?" "Bet on what?" Zichun asked. Yui pointed at the blue-eyed jade fire beast below and said, "If you lose, not only will the blue-eyed jade fire beast return to Chen Kai, I also want her to follow us." Yui's finger moved and landed on Shanya. Shanya was slightly startled. The others also looked at Yui in astonishment. No, Zichun said without hesitation. Yui said mockingly, "What are you afraid that you can't afford to lose?" Zichun said indifferently, "I never gamble with my friends." Yui said, "You don't even dare to ask what my bet is. It seems that you have no confidence in yourself. This is my bet. If you win, you can take it away." A resplendent light appeared in front of Yui. The light turned into a shield of light. It was not a manifestation of energy, but a real shield of light. "Young master, you can't." Uncle Go, who had not spoken before, immediately stopped him. Chun Kai's expression changed. He did not expect Yui to take out this thing. "It's just a soul weapon. Not to mention that it's nothing special. Even if it was, I wouldn't care." Zichun smiled disdainfully. "You really haven't seen much of the world." Yui sighed and said, "This is called a spirit shield, a companion spirit shield. It's not something that ordinary soul weapons can compare to. Even the majority of Saint soul weapons are inferior to it. Once it reaches the Saint Mountain and is baptized, it will be ranked among the 100 weapons of the Saint Mountain." When Yuyi's voice fell, the indifferent Oli's expression changed. Old Tang looked at the spirit shield in astonishment and then no longer paid attention to it. At this moment, Zichun's voice sounded again. "I thought it was something special. I didn't expect it to be a broken shield." He looked at Yui and said mockingly, "You want to use a broken shield to exchange for my friend? Not to mention that it's not ranked in the top 100. Even if it's ranked in the top 10, it's not worthy to bet with my friend, Zichun. Using this broken thing to bet with me? Do you have any shame?" Yui was stunned. Or it could be said that he was stunned. In any case, he had seen the world and met many people. However, this was the first time he had seen such a situation. It's fine if you're ignorant, but you actually put on such a confident appearance. Chapter 38:29. Yui looked at the idiot in his eyes, but couldn't think of how to respond. Because he was too stupid, too ignorant. What kind of amazing existence was the companion spirit shield? On the Saint Soul weapon list, which of the top 100 Saint Soul weapons wasn't famous and would cause countless people to fight for it? Not to mention one life. Even if it was 10 or 100 lives, there would be people who would want it. Top 10. Number 1. What right did you have to say that? Did you have any shame? Idiot. In the end, Yui, who was full of anger, only said these 2 words. Because there was no way to communicate. Zichun was still disdainful, his face full of mockery. Naturally, he didn't notice the strange look Oli gave him. It's unnecessary to talk nonsense with an idiot like you. The companion spirit shield disappeared in front of her. Yui waved her sleeves and turned to leave. The others also left at this time, leaving decisively. Zichun was slightly taken aback. It was obvious that the person who had blocked his path had ill intentions. Why did he leave? He didn't understand, but he didn't ask. Those people started to rush at full speed. Zichun's figure landed and signaled everyone to continue. Oli glanced at Zichun, wanting to teach him some knowledge, but after thinking about the road ahead, he decided to set off first. In the sky thunder python dissipated like a collapsed storm, shaking and scattering. The figures of the Shishan brothers appeared, and his subordinates also walked out from the shadows. At this moment, the younger brother looked at the older brother with shock in his eyes. But more than that, there was helplessness. "Big brother, are we still going to follow?" After hearing the conversation, they already understood a lot of things. For example, the strange beast that followed Zichun, the one that looked very familiar to them, was actually Chun Kai's mount. Obviously, Zichun had snatched it away. Who was Chun Kai? He was a member of the Qin family in Jinyuan City and was very famous. And the emerald-eyed jade fire beast that he accidentally obtained when he was young was even more famous. It was said that Chun Kai could rely on this emerald-eyed jade fire beast to gain the recognition of the Soul Beast Mountain in the Saint Mountain. However, his emerald-eyed jade fire beast had actually been snatched away. Now, even a fool would know that the battle strength of Zichun's group was absolutely extraordinary. Weren't they courting death by thinking about such an existence? Therefore, his younger brother asked this question. "Follow. Why didn't you follow?" The elder brother said in a deep voice. Everyone's body trembled. As the saying goes, the ignorant are innocent. Now that they knew the other party's strength, fear had already appeared in their hearts. If they continued to chase after him, wouldn't they be courting death? Looking at the direction they're heading, they should be heading to the sacred mountain. Perhaps the sacred mountain's greatest event is about to begin. Let's follow them and see. The elder brother said excitedly, if we miss such a grand occasion, we don't know how long we will have to wait for the next one. When they heard that they were not looking for trouble or fighting, they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Uncle Go, why are you leaving? Several hundred li away, Yu-E, who had regained her normal speed, looked at the old man beside her and asked in confusion. After distancing himself from Zichun, Lei Xian regained his composure. This battle had made him realize the gap between him and Zichun. Chun Kai was also at a loss, and even felt very unwilling in his heart. After all, he had once again missed out on the Jade Fire Beast. Brother Chun has arrived, right? I hope you can show yourself. Uncle Go glanced at the sky. Ripples appeared in the air, and a person walked out from the ripples. Looking at the person in the air, Chun Kai's face was filled with excitement. Uncle, why are you here? The old man in the air snorted and descended. He looked at Uncle Go and said, long time no see. Greetings, Uncle Chun. Yu-E immediately bowed to the old man. Lei Xian also cupped his fists and said, greetings, senior. Looking at the two old men who were catching up, Yu-E said in confusion, since Uncle Chun is also here, why aren't we attacking? Why are we leaving? Even if they have an Earth Soul in their team, there's only one. Uncle Go said, that Earth Soul is a little strange. I've never been able to see through him. Even if it's 2 against 1, we might not be able to gain an advantage. Besides, your bet is almost impossible. Even if you win, the other party will definitely not return the item to you. Rather than that, why don't we leave first and think of other ways to deal with them when we reach the Holy Mountain? The old man surnamed Chen nodded and said, that's right, that's also my plan. It wouldn't be wise to make a move first. We have to keep our trump cards until the end. Chen Kai said anxiously, but uncle, The old man surnamed Chen turned to look at Chen Kai and said with a sharp gaze, there's always someone better than you. Let's see if you'll still be so reckless next time. This can be considered a lesson for you. Don't underestimate that companion's spirit shield. Its defense is extremely astonishing and can be considered rare in the world. After stopping to rest at night and talking about the matters of the day, Oli said this. Zichun looked at Oli and said, that spirit shield has an extraordinary background? Oli said, it's not just extraordinary, it's a natural natal item. Once it goes through the baptism of the Holy Mountain, it will definitely be able to enter the top 100 of the soul weapon list. That guy didn't lie. Oli looked at Zichun and said, but you're too ignorant. It's fine if you don't know about the soul weapon list, but you actually have the nerve to say it. Is the soul weapon list very famous? Zichun asked. The Saint Soul weapon from the Holy Soul Mountain is something that everyone wants. And among the many Saint Soul weapons, only 100 can enter the list. Since ancient times, only those 100 people can enter the list, which proves that they are the best 100 Saint Soul weapons. Oli looked at Zichun and said, what do you think of the power of your staff? Zichun nodded and said, of course it's powerful. Even now, I'm still unable to unleash its full power. It's already very terrifying. Oli said, you acknowledge it, but it doesn't have the qualifications to enter the top 100. Zichun asked, how do you know? Oli said, that's because the soul weapon list was established many years ago. In the past 1,000 years, not a single new soul weapon has entered the top 100. The most recent challenge occurred several hundred years ago. Apparently, a soul weapon attempted to challenge the Cloud Rain sword at the end of the list. In the end, it failed and is still missing. That was the only time in the past several hundred years that a soul weapon was challenged and failed. However, as long as that guy from the day's spirit shield receives the baptism, he will definitely enter the top 100. The Cloud Rain sword's failure is already set in stone. Chapter 38:30. Hearing Oli's words, everyone's expression changed. Everyone was very clear about Zichun's combat strength. Even when he fought the blue-eyed Jade Fire Beast last time, Zichun did not use his full strength. But today, Oli said that Zichun could not break through his defense. Are you serious? Zichun looked at Oli, his eyes changing. What else? Oli curled his lips and said, there is no such thing as invincibility in this world. There is only suppression. Unfortunately, he is suppressing you. Zichun lowered his head thoughtfully. He did not bet with you, because he did not want to use Shanya as a bet. He did not expect that the other party would have an invincible defense. Now, Zichun was puzzled. Why did he make such a request? Did he know Shanya's secret? Looking at the silent Zichun, Oli said, you don't have to be depressed. This does not mean that you met someone who can suppress you. It is just a coincidence that you met such an existence. It is rare to see such an existence in hundreds of years. You are lucky to have met such an existence. Oli did not know if he was persuading or discouraging him. They had long been used to Oli's frivolity, but it was inevitable that their mood would not be comfortable. Old Tang suddenly said, the eagle next to him, if I am not wrong, should be the golden eyes spirit-seeking falcon. It can sense the spiritual power of all things and has the title of treasure-seeking grandmaster. He has the companion spirit shield and the golden eyes spirit-seeking falcon. If I am not wrong, he should be able to get the recognition of 2 sacred mountains this time. To be able to enter 1 sacred mountain meant that he had great potential. To be able to get the recognition of 2 sacred mountains meant that he was a genius among geniuses. Their expressions changed once again. It was obvious that Yu Yi's importance in their hearts had increased once again. Zichun understood Old Tang's meaning. It seemed that Yu Yi did not ask for Shanya because he had discovered Shanya's secret, but because of the miracle stone that had been hidden on Shanya. It seemed that he had been sensed by the falcon. However, this also made Zichun relax a lot. As long as they didn't discover Shanya's secret, he would be in even more trouble. Right now, he needed to be on guard against Yu Yi. After all, the other party had left somewhat mysteriously this time. However, the 2 parties would definitely meet again. At that time, he believed that the 2 sides would not be able to be reconciled. After one battle after another, Zichun's group was finally not far from the sacred mountain. Along the way, they passed by 2 more cities. Everyone stayed in the cities for one night, bought some undrunk immortals, and continued on their way. The number of bandits along the way had decreased significantly because there were more and more groups heading to the Holy Mountain. Moreover, there were powerhouses guarding them, so it was possible that the bandits would be wiped out. At this stage, it was clearly a very dangerous profession. The news of the opening of the Sage Heavenly Mirror had already spread. All the forces in the vicinity, as well as many individual cultivators, were heading towards the sacred mountain. Some wanted to try their luck, while others just wanted to join in the fun. There are still so many people on the way. We don't have to be so anxious. After walking for a while, Oli stopped and said, of course, Zichun knew what he meant, so he threw a jar of undrunk immortals to him. Oli chuckled and opened the seal. He took a big gulp of the wine and said, it's comfortable. At this time, there were groups passing by not far away. The 3 women and the emerald-eyed jade fire beast were often the most eye-catching. We will reach the sacred mountain city in less than 5 days. Oli looked ahead and said, it seems that you have received the news early. Don't worry, we have enough time this time. Zichun nodded. He was not so anxious anymore. Oli looked away and said, every time the Sage Heavenly Mirror opens, there will be a series of activities in the sacred mountain city. If you are interested, you can participate. What kind of activities? Zichun asked curiously. Gambling. Oli's eyes lit up with excitement. You can bet on yourself or others. You can bet on whether you can be recognized by the Sage Heavenly Mirror or how many sacred mountains you can join. In short, there is nothing that the sacred mountain city can't do. You can bet on whether you can join the sacred mountain or not. Zichun was puzzled and said, if that is the case, won't it be a big loss? Many people are not qualified to join the sacred mountain, right? Oli glanced at Zichun and said, not everyone is qualified to gamble. The people in the sacred mountain city are not fools. Only those who are recognized are qualified to participate in the gambling. What kind of qualification is needed? Zichun asked. You will understand when you reach the sacred mountain. Oli did not say anything else after that. Just as they were about to hurry, two people came from afar. They were the two Shishan brothers who had been following them all the way. They thought that they had hidden well. If it were not for their clumsy performance and inexperience, they would have been buried long ago. They followed them all the way and did not do anything bad. As the two of them approached, they wore smiles on their faces as they headed straight for Zichun. After following them all the way, they already knew that Zichun was the leader of the group. He was probably the strongest. Zichun looked at the two approaching and said, "What do you want from us this time?" The older brother of the Shishan brothers quickly smiled and said, "What are you talking about, my lord? We are here to apologize to you. We were not sensible before. I hope you can forgive us." At the same time, the older brother gave the younger brother a look. The younger brother took out a jar of wine and walked toward Oli. It was the undrunk immortal. "I hope you don't mind. It's just a small token of appreciation. I hope you'll accept it." The younger brother was very humble and handed over the jar of undrunk immortal. Oli did not want to make things difficult for the younger brother. He took it with a strange smile, but he saw the younger brother's pained expression. Then, the younger brother walked toward Old Tang, Lan Rue, Noah, Pang Chong, and finally the three women. He gave each of them a jar of undrunk immortal. Everyone took it one by one, but there was a smile in their eyes. Zichun also had a jug of undrunk immortal in his hand. He did not hesitate, nor did he have any suspicions. He directly opened it and drank a mouthful. Then, he raised the jug and raised it towards his brother, making a toast. The older brother quickly took out a jar of wine, but it was not undrunk immortal. He said, "I'm used to drinking this. Although undrunk immortal is good, the taste is too strong. I'm not used to it." Chapter 38-31. Upon hearing Zichun's words, Shishan's elder brother was slightly startled, his expression somewhat unnatural. Zichun took a sip of wine and said, "Is it that hard to guess? You've been following us for a long time. Now that you've suddenly appeared, there must be a reason." Of course, Zichun didn't believe the so-called apology. The price of drunken immortal was not cheap. If not for Oli, he wouldn't have been willing to buy it. Shishan's elder brother was more shrewd. At the very least, he couldn't see any expression on his face. However, the regret in his younger brother's eyes when he gave away the drunken immortal was not fake. On top of that, they didn't have any other gains along the way. It could be assumed that they were already strapped for cash. Shishan's elder brother smiled awkwardly and said, "It seems that I can't hide anything from you, sir. Actually, I'm here to ask you, sir, have you really decided to go to the sacred mountain?" If not for Oli's previous words, Zichun certainly wouldn't have understood what Shishan's elder brother meant. But now, even if the other party's words were very roundabout, Zichun could instantly guess his intentions. "You want to bet on me?" Cold sweat immediately appeared on Shishan's elder brother's forehead. He didn't expect the other party to guess his intentions with just a few words. Seeing the other party tensing up, Zichun said, "Don't be nervous. This is your freedom. Tell me your plan." Shishan's elder brother looked at Zichun nervously. When he realized that Zichun really wasn't angry, he calmed down and said, "I feel that sir will definitely be able to enter the sacred mountain, so I've decided to stake everything on this one throw and bet all our belongings on sir. Don't worry, sir. After we succeed, we will give you half of our profits." "Are you sure?" Zichun looked at him. This was a big decision. If they failed, they would lose everything. "I'm not sure, but because I believe in you, sir." Shishan's elder brother said, "We don't have much savings now, but once we reach the sacred mountain, there is a specialized organization that can temporarily borrow blue crystal coins from." Looking at the other party who was brimming with confidence, Zichun said, "Since you've made such a big decision, then you shouldn't put it on me. You should have seen that guy from last time. His companion's spirit shield's defense is extremely strong, and joining the sacred mountain is already a done deal. Furthermore, once the other party receives the baptism, the companion's spirit shield can be directly promoted to the soul weapon ranking." Shishan's brother had heard of this matter before, but just like Zichun, he didn't pay much attention to it. However, now that he heard Zichun say the same thing, his face was filled with shock. Being in the top 100 of the soul weapon ranking, that was very impressive. However, he quickly shook his head and said with a firm attitude, No, I've decided to bet on Sir. Other than believing in your strength, I also believe in your character. The reason why I was able to come here was because you didn't kill me. Zichun finished the undrunken immortal in one gulp, then patted his brother's shoulder and said, "In that case, it's up to you." Obviously, he had agreed to it. Shishan's brother smiled gratefully and became excited again. He immediately waved his hand at his younger brother. The two brothers bowed to Zichun and left. Before they left, they didn't forget to greet the others with apologetic smiles. After that, the Shishan brothers kept a distance from Zichun's group and didn't visit them again. A few days later, they arrived at the sacred mountain city. This was a very large city, with a population of several million. It was like a huge monster standing there. Behind the sacred mountain city was a place shrouded in clouds and mist. That was the direction of the sacred mountain. However, because of the clouds and mist that lingered all year round, very few people could see the sacred mountain in its entirety. The opening of the sacred heavenly mirror was the only shortcut to enter the sacred mountain. Therefore, many people came to the sacred mountain city. Apart from some who came to join in the fun, most of them came to try their luck. As they walked into the city, they often heard discussions about the opening of the sacred heavenly mirror. In fact, this place didn't belong to the Azure Sand State anymore. Now that they were in the vicinity of the sacred mountain, the Lan family's influence here had been reduced to the minimum. However, since it was such an important place, the Lan family naturally had their own property here. Therefore, Zichun and the others didn't have to worry about accommodation. After arriving at the sacred mountain city, the Lan family took the initiative to contact Lan Rue and arranged everything properly. Finally, they didn't have to rush anymore, so everyone could relax. In a restaurant that was controlled by the Lan family, everyone sat in a private room and drank to their heart's content. At night, the Lan family sorted out all the information about the sacred mountain and sent it to Lan Rue's room. Then, Lan Rue brought the information to Zichun and they began to discuss it. The first test was the questioning heart path of the sacred heavenly mirror. Only those who passed this test could take the next round of the sacred heavenly mirrors test. Lan Rue said, "To put it bluntly, this round of test is actually a matter of qualification, or a matter of quota. Look, the Holy Mountain Casino has already opened the first round of bets, that is, who can be ranked in the top 30. The odds are 1 to 10, 1 to 30 for the top 20, 1 to 50 for the top 10, 1 to 100 for the top 3, and 1 to 1,000 for the first place." The bets are already starting? Zichun was a little surprised. Lan Rue nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. However, after reading the information, I suspect that the Sacred Mountain set up the first round of the test purely to cooperate with the Sacred Mountain Casino. After all, it seems that the odds for the first place are extremely high, but there are too many people who can participate. Who can guess who the first place will be? This is obviously giving money to the Sacred Mountain Casino for free. Perhaps in the end, no one will guess the first place correctly." Zichun shook his head and said, "That's not necessarily true. What if someone is very confident and wants to bet on themselves?" Lan Hongyi, who was at the side, said, "Why don't you go and bet on yourself? Don't bet too much. Even if you only bet 1 blue crystal coin, you can earn 1,000 blue crystal coins back. I won't give money to others for free. However, since it's a bet, as long as I have some estimation of my strength, I can still earn a lot of blue crystal coins." Zichun thought for a moment and said, "Lan Rue, go and inquire about this questioning heart path. Find out what it means and what it mainly tests." At this moment, the door suddenly opened and Oli walked in. The questioning heart path only tests one state of mind. It will test whether your state of mind is strong or not. It will also test your soul power rank. Chapter 38-32. You know a lot about the Wenshin Road? Zichun was very surprised to hear Oli's words. He did not care about the other party's tone and choice of words. Those with a firm will often go far. You have a good mind. When the time comes, as long as you do your best, entering the top 30 will not be a problem at all. Oli came in front of Zichun, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "I have high hopes for you. Whether or not you can continue to drink the undrunk immortal will depend on your performance this time." Then, Oli looked at Lan Rue and the others and said, "The few of you can also try to enter the top 30. After all, the rewards are very generous. Of course, before that, you must register first and get a number token before you can bet on yourself. Before Oli left, he took a bottle of undrunk immortal from Zichun. It was worth mentioning that when he came to this city, the first thing Oli told him was that there was a place that sold undrunk immortal here. The price was still as high as before. Let's rest for the night and register tomorrow. Everyone left, leaving only Zichun in the room. Looking at the luminous pearl that illuminated the room, he fell into deep thought. This time, he came to the sacred mountain mainly for the second part of the dark ghost devouring soul technique. This was also his main purpose in coming to this world. Now that he had arrived at the sacred mountain, the thing he wanted was very likely to be on the Saint Talisman Mountain or the Saint Soul Mountain. Then, he must obtain the recognition of these two sacred mountains. He had been in this world for a long time, and he wondered how the Saint Spirit domain was doing. His world and everyone else were fine. Fortunately, the journey back was not too far away. After a quiet night, everyone went to register the next day. Pang Chong was a little hesitant when he went to register because he was not confident that he could enter the sacred mountain. The reason he came with Zichen this time was just to take a look and join in the fun. However, after being persuaded by the others, he decided to give it a try. There were many places to register. One of them was not far from their inn. When registering, there was no examination and they only needed to pay the fee. The registration fee was 100 blue crystal coins. No matter if they succeeded or failed, they would not be refunded. After paying the blue crystal coins, everyone received a token with their own number and name on it. Room 303. This was the number on Zichen's token, indicating that he was already the 3,000th person to register. The other people's numbers were also adjacent to each other. After getting a number, they could place their bets, and the place where they placed their bets was less than 100 feet away from the registration location. Let's go and take a look. The place where the bets were placed was very lively. There were all kinds of noises, but most of them were there to join in the fun. When Zichen and his group arrived, the people on both sides parted to make way for them, and a passage appeared. How do you want to bet? Zichen asked as they moved forward. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on the three women, and no one was paying attention to them. I'll bet on you, Lan Rue said directly without even thinking about it. A little gambling is fun. You guys can try betting on yourselves. Zichen smiled. Lan Rue shook his head and said, I can only bet on the top 30. I still have this much self-awareness. Moreover, I haven't broken through yet. Speaking of this, Lan Rue was very depressed because he was still in the soul realm, and Lan Hongyi and Noah had not broken through. Even though they were already very diligent in their cultivation, who knew that they still could not break through. We can play casually. What if we succeed? Lan Hongyi was clearly interested. She walked to the registration place and said, 100 blue crystal coins to bet on myself. She took out her token, room 3024, Lan Hongyi. The person in charge of the reception was clearly used to betting on himself and registered it skillfully. 1,000 blue crystal coins to bet on Lan Gu Ming, room 3025. Lan Hongyi continued, bet that she can enter the top 30. The moment they received their tokens, everyone's number had already been sent to the various gambling houses, so they only needed to register. Lan Gu Ming looked at Lan Hongyi with some worry. Clearly, she had no confidence in entering the top 30. Lan Hongyi did not care at all. She continued, 1,000 blue crystal coins, room 3026, Shanya can enter the top 30. Hearing Lan Hongyi's bet, the expressions of the people around changed. This kind of situation was rare. Lan Hongyi continued, 10,000 blue crystal coins to bet on Zichen, room 3023, that he can enter the top 30. Oh no, the top 20. You're too late. The information has already been recorded, said the person in charge of registration. Lan Hongyi thought for a moment and said, in that case, I'll add another 10,000 to bet that he can enter the top 20. As soon as she said that, the surroundings were in an uproar. Many people here were just here to join in the fun and bet a few blue crystal coins. Almost all of them were in the top 30. It was the first time that someone in the top 20 had placed such a large bet. Zichun said helplessly, don't mess around. The top 30 is good enough. As soon as he said that, more people had strange expressions on their faces. They all sized up Zichun. Just how strong was he to have such confidence? Many people remembered his serial number, 3023. How can this be messing around? I'll bet another 1,000 blue crystal coins that Zichun will be the first. Lan Hongyi said with a smile, I have high hopes for you. If you have high hopes for me, why don't you bet on the first place? Zichun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wasn't this obviously giving money to the gambling house? To be honest, he didn't even have the confidence to enter the top 30. He didn't even dare to think about the first place. What if he wins? At this moment, Lan Rue, who had been uninterested, suddenly said, I'll bet 1,000 blue crystal coins that Zichun will be the first place. I'll bet another 10,000 blue crystal coins that Zichun can enter the top 30. In this way, even if Zichun couldn't become the first place, no one would lose anything. Of course, the premise was that Zichun must enter the top 30. Otherwise, everyone would lose a lot. Shanya had almost no wealth, and so did Lan Guming. Therefore, Noah placed bets for the two of them. Basically, as long as Zichun entered the top 30, he would make a profit. He also bought some bets for the first place, just to join in the fun, to pass the time. Obviously, Zichun and the others were the typical type of people who bet on themselves. Moreover, they bet a huge amount. This made many people around them inquire about their origins. Unfortunately, their faces were too new, and no one knew who they were. Soon, everyone finished placing their bets. It was Zichun's turn. Zichun thought seriously and said, 20,000 blue crystal coins for the top 30, 2,000 blue crystal coins for the top 20, and 1,000 blue crystal coins for the top 10. Obviously, they were betting on themselves again, and the amount was not small. However, compared to the others, Zichun was much more cautious. He didn't dare to bet on the first place. There was a lot of discussion around them. Their eyes were looking at them from time to time. Aren't you guys being too obvious? Just then, an indifferent voice sounded. 5 people came from behind the crowd. The leader was a young man. He stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at Zichun in front of him and said disdainfully, You disguised yourself as an expert and cheated us of our blue crystal coins. Don't you have any shame? They turned around and saw the young man. What do you mean? Pang Chong said indifferently. You know very well what I mean. I won't say much here. In short, it's impossible for you to cheat us. The young man smiled coldly and said, I, Sheng Luan, will never allow such a thing to happen. Zichun looked at the young man with a sneer. He didn't know why, but his heart suddenly tightened as if he had met a formidable enemy. He had never seen the young man before, but he felt a natural hostility towards him. This made him very puzzled. At this time, the crowd exclaimed again, It's Sheng Luan. My God, I'm so lucky to meet Master Sheng Luan. It is said that Master Sheng Luan has already learned the techniques of the sacred mountain at a young age. It is said that he will directly attract the attention of the 3 sacred mountains with the highest potential this time. The crowd exclaimed loudly. Many people's faces were full of excitement and shock. It was obvious that the young man named Sheng Luan was very famous here. Chapter 38-33. Isn't this the place to place bets? Zichun asked when he realized that he couldn't see through the other party. If this is the place to place bets, then what's wrong with me betting here? The blue crystal coins are mine. I can bet on whoever I want. What does it have to do with you? Or do you think that I'm making you lose face by betting too much? Zichun finished in one breath, not giving the other party a chance to answer. However, his seemingly rational answer didn't bring about the desired effect. The surrounding people were convinced by Sheng Luan's reputation. Even though Zichun's words were reasonable, they still attracted a lot of boos. If it weren't for the 3 beauties here, they would have already cursed at him. Everyone knows what's wrong with you. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Sheng Luan smiled disdainfully and said, As for you saying that I'm losing face, are you worthy? Sheng Luan's eyes swept across the crowd and said, Are you worthy? If it's fishy for us to bet on ourselves, then what are you doing here? Don't tell me you want to bet on me to win. It seems that you have a good vision. If you bet on me to enter the top 30, I guarantee that you won't lose anything. Zichun's words were indifferent, but there was also a hint of sarcasm in them that everyone could hear. Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of my bet? Sheng Luan snorted and stepped forward, saying, I bet on myself to enter the top 3. Top 3? Judging by your tone, I thought you were going to be the first. Lan Hongyi, who was angry but didn't say anything, couldn't help but laugh. You're making me laugh to death. Oh no, your tone is so big. It's going to scare me to death. You bet on yourself to enter the top 3, and you still have the face to laugh at us who bet on the first place. Lan Hongyi shook her head and said, public morals are degenerating. I didn't expect a good-looking gigolo to be so arrogant. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at Lan Hongyi. They all thought that this ridiculously beautiful woman dared to say such a thing. Wasn't this obviously offending Sheng Luan? How stupid was it to offend Sheng Luan in the Sagely Mountain City? At this moment, many people gave Lan Hongyi the evaluation of having a chest but no brain. You don't have to provoke me like this. I'm determined to get first place this time. Sheng Luan smiled coldly. Lan Hongyi didn't look at Sheng Luan. Instead, she sized up Zichun and said seriously, Zichun, did you see that? In this world, who can boast more shamelessly than you? Zichun was also very cooperative with Lan Hongyi. He nodded and said, indeed. It seems that the saying is true. There is always someone better than you. Lan Rue and the others laughed. Meanwhile, the people Sheng Luan brought were all looking coldly at Zichun's group. Feeling the killing intent from these people, Zichun smiled and said, are you planning to fight me here? A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he said disdainfully, you think you're worthy? You're courting death. One of them took a step forward, and the aura around him began to surge. At this moment, Sheng Luan waved his hand and said, let him live for a few days first. Then, he turned around and said, I'll bet 1,000 on the first place. How arrogant. 1,000? If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you were going to bet 10,000. Lan Hongyi continued to mock. However, as soon as she finished speaking, cries of surprise sounded from all around. This was because Sheng Luan wasn't betting blue crystal coins, but coins that were as bright as Xing Qin's. These were blue astral coins, which were more valuable. When converted to blue crystal coins, 1 blue astral coins was equivalent to 1,000 blue crystal coins. 1,000 blue astral coins was equivalent to 1 million blue crystal coins. If one bet 1 million blue crystal coins on himself to be the first place, the reward would be an astronomical figure. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, Sheng Luan turned around and left in a carefree manner. Let's go too. Looking at the uproar in the crowd, Zichun also walked outside. At this moment, he was still puzzled because he felt that Lan Hongyi had appeared here on purpose. Lan Hongyi was someone who could win the first place, but he just had to come here and let him meet him. Before Zichun and his group could leave, a commotion sounded from behind them. I bet 1,000 blue crystal coins on Lord Sheng Luan to be the first place. I bet Lord Sheng Luan to be in the top 3. I bet Lord Sheng Luan to be in the top 10. After seeing Sheng Luan with their own eyes, the crowd was very confident in Sheng Luan. At this moment, they no longer hesitated and placed their bets one after another. If Sheng Luan could really win the first place, this place alone was enough to make everyone a lot of money. This was not the only reason why some people immediately went to find their friends and family. In this way, more and more people would place their bets on Sheng Luan. Zichun didn't care whether the gambling house would lose everything in the first round. After returning to their residence, they began to discuss how to deal with the next test. After the commotion caused by Sheng Luan, no one paid any attention to Zichun, and no one placed any bets on Zichun. This was what the Shishan brothers, who had been hiding in the dark, wanted to see. The two brothers saw everything. Looking at the lively crowd, the younger brother had a change of heart. He lowered his voice and said, why don't we also bet half of our bets on Sheng Luan? We don't expect him to win the first place. As long as he enters the top 20, we will make a lot of money. With his strength, it shouldn't be a problem. The others nodded in agreement. Obviously, they didn't want to miss this opportunity. No, we will bet on Lord Zichun. We will put all our bets on him, said the older brother in a deep voice. Why? Asked the younger brother in confusion. The others were also very confused. Because Lord Zichun has a kindness that many people don't have. Although we don't want to be such a person, we all want to meet such a person, don't we? Based on this kindness, we should support Lord Zichun. In fact, There was one more thing that the older brother didn't say. Compared to Sheng Luan, whom he has only met once, Zichun is more trustworthy. Then, the older brother lowered his voice and said, "Go and secretly bet on Lord Zichun winning the first place. Bet 1,000 blue crystal coins." The younger brother glanced at the older brother. "If everything goes smoothly, we will earn several times more. Even if we deduct the service fee, we will still earn a lot. Losing 1,000 blue crystal coins is naturally nothing." Following brother Shishan's instructions, they invested all of their wealth in a few places over 20 times. They placed all their bets on Zichun winning. The Shishan brothers' cautiousness wasn't without reason. However, there were too many people placing bets in the city. No one cared who they placed their bets on. Although this was only the first test, the enthusiasm of the various factions placing their bets greatly exceeded expectations. Every day, an astronomical number of bets were placed. Chapter 38-34. The fierceness of the competition had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. After Lan Rue received more accurate information, his face turned ashen. Looking at the situation, it would be extremely difficult for Zichun to enter the top 30, let alone the rest of them. Lan Rue placed a thick stack of information on the table and smiled bitterly. "This is the personal information of those who have a chance of entering the top 30. The information is quite detailed. It's worth 1,000 blue crystal coins." Zichun was a little surprised. He took the information and read it carefully. They were all disciples of aristocratic families. They were all in the human soul realm and had their own means. The information was quite detailed. If he sold it in this city, he believed that he would be able to earn a sky-high price. He began to admire this city's ability to make money. At the same time, he began to suspect that the original intention of opening the sacred mountain was purely to make money. At this moment, the door opened and Oli walked in. "We have business here. Do you want to take it?" Zichun raised his head and asked curiously, "What business?" Oli turned around and saw a person walking in. It was a middle-aged man wearing a long gown. He looked very scholarly. "Everyone, I have a few small things here that you might like." The man did not introduce himself, but directly stated his purpose. He had more than a dozen sacred talismans in his hand. The patterns on the surface of these sacred talismans were very complicated. Zichun had never seen them before. "What kind of talismans are these?" Zichun asked. The man smiled and said, "This one is called Shadow Shift. This one is called Sacred Mountain Crush. This one is called Universal Talisman. This one is called Immortal Ascension." As a sacred talisman master, Zichun's expression immediately became strange when he heard the introduction of these sacred talismans. He looked at Oli with a questioning look in his eyes. "Where did you find such a strange liar?" Everyone else's expression was also very strange. After introducing about 10 types of sacred talismans, the man smiled and said, "These sacred talismans are almost useless in the outside world. The only use they have is in the sacred heavenly mirror. For example, this shadow shift can instantly change the position of two people. Another example is Sacred Mountain Crush. When used on others, it is equivalent to carrying a heavy load. It will consume a lot of energy." Hearing the introduction, Zichun's expression changed, and he said, "You're cheating." The other party smiled and said, "This is an auxiliary tool. It has nothing to do with cheating." Lan Rue asked, "How much is this holy talisman?" The other party stretched out 5 fingers. Lan Rue said, 50 blue crystal coins? The other party said, "This means 5. 5 blue crystal coins? Are you really that kind?" Zichun obviously didn't believe it. 5 blue astral coins. Zichun had an impulse to curse. This broken saint talisman actually had such a high price. Why didn't he just go rob someone? The price may seem high, but all of you have bet heavily on yourself. Once you win with the help of these items, you will earn more than just a few blue astral coins. The other party waved the talisman in his hand and said, "So, this price is very fair." Zichun's expression turned ugly. He looked at the middle-aged man and said, "In that case, if we refuse, you will quickly go to the next shop, right? The number of props is limited. If you really don't like them, I can only go to the next shop. Many people will be happy to increase their success rate." When they heard this, they became anxious and wanted to buy. Unexpectedly, Zichun shook his head and said, "We don't need them." The other party looked at Zichun in surprise and said, "My name is Wu Yud. If you change your mind, you can find me at the nearest gambling den." After saying that, the other party put away the holy talisman and turned to leave. Oli watched this scene quietly without any change in his expression. He wasn't surprised by the other party's use of the holy talisman, nor was he surprised by Zichun's refusal. "Wait," Zichun suddenly said. The nervous others also heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, they couldn't let their emotions affect their decisions. They had to buy props that could increase their success rate. Wu Yud turned to look at Zichun and asked with a smile, "Why? Have you changed your mind? Congratulations, you've made the right and wise choice." Zichun said, "Don't get me wrong. I still won't buy this thing. I think you should change your name. Don't call yourself Wu Yud. Just call yourself Wu Da. It sounds more appropriate." The smile on Wu Yud's face froze. He looked deeply at Zichun and then left. The others had looks of regret and disappointment on their faces. It was obvious that Zichun had completely missed this golden opportunity. After Wu Yud left, Zichun looked at Oli and said, "You already knew, didn't you?" Oli said, "It wasn't like this before." Who would believe that? Zichun's face was full of sarcasm. Oli said, "Actually, it's because you guys are too smart." "Us? What does this have to do with us? This is clearly a scam by the Sacred Mountain. I really didn't expect that such a famous sacred mountain would do such a thing." Through this matter, Zichun was extremely disappointed in the Sacred Mountain. He didn't even have much hope of finding the second part of the soul-devouring ghost technique. How could such an extraordinary technique be on the Sacred Mountain? Oli said, "Think about it. What did that guy take when he left? The sacred talisman? Then who wrote the sacred talisman?" Oli said indifferently, "If you descenders weren't so smart, who could come up with such an idea?" Zichun was speechless. It turned out that this was the doing of a descender. The Sacred Mountain allows this? Aren't they afraid of damaging their reputation? Zichun asked doubtfully. It's not a mistaken principle, and it can also generate income. Why not? Oli said, "You'll naturally know after you participate in the assessment. All props are just external objects in the end. They can add flowers to embroidery and create some effects, but they won't have a big impact on the final result." "How do you know?" Zichun was a little skeptical. "I guessed," Oli said and turned to leave. Zichun was a little depressed. The appearance of the props had indeed affected his mood. Since coming here, all the things related to the Sacred Mountain couldn't be separated from the word unscrupulous. The others were also silent. Even in Lan Rue's heart, he had the thought of secretly buying some props back. Fortunately, he saw that Zichun's attitude was firm, so he didn't do anything unnecessary. Several days passed in the blink of an eye, and it was time for the sage heavenly mirror to open. Chapter 38-35. When they left the room, the city was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone was talking about the upcoming test. They were all excited as they talked about how talented and extraordinary the person they had bet on was. As participants, Zichun and the others had to rush to the foot of the Sacred Mountain immediately. The sage heavenly mirror would be activated there. After they left the city, they flew into the sky with many people traveling with them. When Zichun arrived, there were already many powerhouses there. There were more than 10,000 of them. Although there were people of different realms, most of them were in the human soul realm. Regarding this first qualification test, many people were very excited, but there were also some who were absent-minded. Zichun and the others stood together. The blue-eyed jade fire beast did not appear this time because Zichun had not figured out how to make it appear. There would be no problem with its safety if it was placed in the inn controlled by the Lan family. Although the Lan family's influence in this place was extremely weak, it was still a big shot. People came one after another. It seemed that many people had signed up. By noon, there were already more than 15,000 people gathered here. The clouds in front of them were still lingering, making it impossible to see the Sacred Mountain. Suddenly, ripples appeared in the sky as the clouds in front of them began to roll. A figure flew out from the clouds, immediately causing exclamations. It was someone from the Sacred Mountain. It was a middle-aged man who looked very dignified. When he glanced at the crowd, The noisy crowd immediately became very quiet. This was a sign of respect for the sacred mountain. The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "I am Sheng Rao from the Sacred Soul Mountain. I am in charge of your qualification test. In the end, only 1,000 people will be qualified to be selected by the sage Heavenly Mirror. What you need to do is to persevere and not be eliminated until you are qualified." The middle-aged man turned around, bowed to the sky, and said respectfully, "Please open the sage Heavenly Mirror." Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in the sky. The clouds were blown away, and a huge mirror of light appeared. It occupied the entire sky and reflected everyone's figures. The ripples on the mirror's surface made it look very spectacular. Exclamations were heard again in the quiet crowd. It was obvious that this was the first time for many of them to see the sage Heavenly Mirror. Sacred Rado said, "The test begins now. Take out your tokens and enter the Elysium Mirror. Those who came late will be disqualified." Clearly, the test had already begun, and those who had missed the time were no longer qualified. Hearing those words, the crowd quickly took out their tokens. Immediately, a bright light shone from their tokens, enveloping them. In the next moment, a huge suction force came from the Elysium Mirror, and everyone who was shrouded by the light immediately flew toward the Elysium Mirror. Streaks of light tore through the air and disappeared. The originally crowded ground had once again become spacious and empty. As soon as the sage Heavenly Mirror was activated, reflections appeared around the gambling dens in the Sagely Mountain City. These reflections reflected the participants of the competition. The one leading them was Sheng Luan. He was the most popular candidate this time. The reason why his image was the first to be shown was because there were a lot of bets on him. Other than the number one, there were many who were in the top 30. Those who had a great chance of becoming the number one would have no problem entering the top 30, even if there were some accidents. Many people were waiting for the test to end so that they could make a fortune and live a rich life. After seeing Sheng Luan, the whole city burst into cheers. Oli, who had gone to buy wine, passed by a gambling den and heard the cheers. Looking at the excited crowd, he couldn't help but feel pity for them. After so many years, it's still the same old routine. The things they do are still so smelly. He took a big gulp of wine. Although he didn't care about anything, there was a hint of sadness in his eyes at this time. However, it quickly disappeared. The Shishan brothers and the people they had brought were staring at the screens nervously. So far, there were only flashes of people, and there were even close-up shots of many people. Only Zichun and his group were not shown. When the light fell, Zichun was already inside the Elysium Mirror. What was more humane was that they were still together and didn't split up. The moment they landed on the ground, everyone scanned their surroundings warily. So far, no one knew what the test was. Everyone was on guard. At this moment, an old voice suddenly came from the sky. This test is to climb a mountain. If you successfully reach the top of the mountain, it means that you have passed the test. Or, if you persist until the end and don't get eliminated, it means that you have passed the test. As the old voice fell, a series of stone steps appeared in front of everyone. There were countless of them. The stone steps were wide enough to allow hundreds of people to walk through them in parallel. The mountain itself was even bigger and couldn't be seen at all. "Let's go." The people who were originally on guard against each other rushed forward at this moment. Obviously, they all wanted to reach the top as soon as possible. The voice was very clear. The first to reach the top would be qualified. Zichun didn't move. When most people moved, he still stood there and looked at the people in front of him leaving. Lan Hongyi said anxiously, "What are you waiting for? If we leave any later, we will lose the qualification." Zichun retracted his gaze from the distance and looked in several other directions. He was not the only one who didn't move. Reaching the top can indeed qualify, but didn't you hear what the voice said? As long as we persist until the end, we can also qualify. Zichun said in a deep voice, "This test is not as simple as it seems. Moreover, we don't have any tools with us. If we walk in front, we will only be live targets." At this time, everyone's eyes were also following Zichun's gaze. When they saw that there were many extraordinary people who didn't move, they were not so anxious anymore. "It's Sheng Luan. He is coming." Noah suddenly lowered his voice and said. Zichun had already noticed him. He didn't move forward at all. At this moment, his eyes were very unfriendly, as if he wanted to fight with Zichen to determine the winner. When they saw Shang Luan approaching, Noah and the others became very nervous. Chapter 38-36. The Shishan brothers had been looking for Zichen, but there were no images of him. After all, there were more than 10,000 people participating in the assessment, and most of the images were given to the favorites to win the championship. Perhaps Zichen had already ascended the stairs with the rest of the team. Shishan's younger brother suddenly exclaimed. He finally saw Zichen, but it was in Shang Luan's image. The elder brother's expression changed when he saw this scene. He seemed very nervous and worried. After all, Shang Luan was the one who claimed to be the champion. If he attacked Zichen now, Zichen wouldn't even be able to enter the top 30. He might even lose his qualification. The people around also recognized Zichen and started laughing at him. Isn't this the guy who bet on himself to enter the top 30? I heard that he was hired by the gambling house. Now that he has met Master Shang Luan, I believe he will be eliminated. Poor guy. He was caught red-handed by Master Shang Luan. He will definitely be eliminated by Master Shang Luan. This is not called poor. This is called the evils he brought on himself. The sounds of mockery were endless. The Shishan brothers were furious when they heard this, but they didn't have time to care about them. The most important thing now was to see how Zichen would escape this disaster. In the sagely heavenly mirror, Shang Luan looked at the frowning Zichen and the nervous people. He smiled faintly and said, "Are you scared? Don't worry, I won't do anything to trash like you for the time being." After saying this, he smiled proudly and turned to leave. Those who followed Shang Luan made a throat-slitting gesture as they walked past Zichen. "You are courting death." Pang Cheng's eyes flashed coldly. Zichen waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about these guys." The feeling of hostility from before emerged again. This made Zichen even more curious about Shang Luan's identity. Unfortunately, as a favorite to win the championship, there was not much information about Shang Luan in the information he bought last time. However, there was one thing that was for sure. He had already passed the Sacred Mountains test. Even if he didn't join the Sacred Heavenly Mirror, he could still join the Sacred Mountain. The others also left one after another. Everyone was separated by a certain distance. As they moved forward, they were also on guard against each other. "Let's go too." Zichen walked towards the stairs in front of him. Those who were walking fast had already reached the 200th step and were considered to be in the lead. When Zichen took his first step on the stone steps, he felt a strange power coming from under his feet. It was like some kind of power was probing him, but it quickly disappeared. After that, nothing else happened. Step by step, Zichen walked up the stone steps like everyone else. Hundreds of stone steps were traversed in a very relaxed manner. However, even after raising his head, Zichen was still unable to find the end of the stone steps. Those who had climbed the stairs first had already reached the 1000th step, but at this moment, cries of alarm suddenly rang out. Many people who had reached the 1000th step suddenly lost control of their bodies and were sent flying backwards. As they flew backwards, their bodies disappeared into thin air. Obviously, they had been eliminated. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of people had been disqualified. Lan Rue and the others immediately tensed up. Zichen said, "Everyone, be careful." After eliminating a group of people, most of the people had successfully climbed the 1000th step. Just as Zichen took a step forward, he felt a powerful force coming towards him. It wanted to shake his body off. However, it didn't succeed. This force was within his control. The others were not affected by it and continued to climb up. "How many steps have we taken?" Zichen glanced at Shanya next to him. She had been silently recording the number. Shanya didn't even think about it and directly said, "We'll reach the 8,000 steps soon." They were about to reach the 8,000 stone steps, but they still couldn't see the end. At this moment, everyone understood the meaning of the voice before. As long as they persevered, it didn't matter if they didn't reach the end. At this moment, many people had doubts in their hearts, thinking that there was no end at all. The number of people had been reduced by more than half. As they moved forward, they could feel the pressure. They also saw that one existence after another couldn't persevere and was disqualified. Among them, There were some in the soul realm and some in the human soul realm. As for Lan Rui, Noah, and Lan Hongyi and Zichen's team, they were still persevering and weren't affected much. What was the Wenxin Road asking? Zichen hadn't really seen it yet. After climbing the 8,000 stone steps, the number of people decreased by a lot. During this time, Zichen had been on guard. Of course, he didn't forget the item that Wu Yid had mentioned. However, no one had used it yet. Then, they reached the 9,000 stone steps and lost a large number of people. By the time they reached the 10,000 stone steps, there were less than 3,000 people left. After walking past the 10,000 stone steps, Zichun looked up. The stone steps that were originally unreachable and seemed to have no end seemed to have undergone some changes. He took another step and a ripple appeared under his feet. A passageway appeared in front of him. He didn't know where it led. He was puzzled as he walked into the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a world surrounded by lightning. The moment he saw that world, Zichun sensed a familiar aura. It was a world that belonged to him. His friends lived in it. When he saw that world, Zichun's expression didn't change much. There was no excitement, no melancholy or emotion. He looked up at the sky. This place was very similar to the Sea of Lightning of the Holy Thunder Clan. However, Zichun, who was very clear-headed, knew very well where he was. This is the Wenxin Road? Is it just an illusion array? He waved his hand and said, "Disperse. It's useless to me." As if his words were a law, the illusion in front of him disappeared. Zichun stood on the stone steps again. However, at this moment, he was shocked to discover that the people who had crossed the 10,000 stone steps were disappearing one by one. Disappearing meant that they were eliminated. Could it be that they haven't walked the Wenxin Road and didn't realize that it was an illusion? Such doubts arose in Zichen's heart. At this moment, he saw someone move. Obviously, like him, they had left the illusion and walked the Wenxin Road. However, as soon as he moved, a ray of light appeared on his body. Then, his body disappeared and was replaced by a stranger standing where he was standing. It was a prop, Zichen exclaimed. Those who hadn't used their props until now obviously couldn't help it. Chapter 38-37. Someone used a prop, breaking the silence of the place. Then, all kinds of props appeared. The tools and sacred talismans made by sacred talisman masters that were only effective in this place were displayed one by one. One of them was hit by a saint talisman, and his body stayed in place, unable to move. Another person seemed to be petrified, and even his expression was frozen. As for those who used tools, they took light steps and flew forward. Zichen didn't dare to delay any longer. This time, he had to make sure that he could enter the top 30. Otherwise, they would suffer a great loss. However, he had just taken a step when a huge force suddenly fell on him. His body swayed, and he almost fell. "I'm here, and you still want to leave?" A cold laugh came from behind Zichen. It was Sheng Luan. Zichen's pupils shrank. When did he get behind him? He immediately turned around and saw Noah and the others. At this moment, their eyes were closed, and their faces were filled with pain. "What did you do to them?" Zichen looked coldly at Sheng Luan. Sheng Luan smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, it's nothing serious. I just felt that they didn't sleep enough, so I let them sleep a little longer. However, they didn't seem to accept my kindness. That's too disappointing. Since it's so painful to sleep, I'll help them get rid of it." Sheng Luan snapped his fingers and said, "Let's go." In the group, Pang Chang's figure flashed, and he disappeared. He was disqualified. Zichen's expression changed. He turned around and glared at Sheng Luan. His eyes were cold. "You're courting death." Sheng Luan's smile didn't fade. He continued, "Is that so? Do you have the ability to kill me?" Then, he snapped his fingers again and said, "Let's go." Then, Noah disappeared. Sheng Luan laughed loudly. He snapped his fingers for the third time, and Lan Hongyi disappeared again. In the blink of an eye, the three of them were disqualified. Just as Zichen was looking at them with concern, Sheng Luan snapped his fingers for the fourth time. However, this time, Zichen felt a dangerous aura. When he turned around, he saw Sheng Luan staring at him. "It's your turn this time." With a snap of his fingers, a strange power fell on Zichun. This power tore at Zichun's body, as if it wanted to tear his body apart. This was a sign of disqualification. However, this strange phenomenon disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. The originally nervous Zichun looked at Shang Luan with a mocking expression after the energy around him dissipated and said, "Was it fun?" Shang Luan was stunned. "You're fine?" Zichun sneered and said, "If I tell you to scram now, you won't be happy, right?" San Luan's expression changed. Zichun waved his hand and said, "Disperse. If the Wenshin Road is just an illusion, it's useless to me. Your clumsy acting skills and unrealistic illusions are of no use to me." Shang Luan disappeared. However, when he disappeared, a strange light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Zichun. Zichun's vision returned to normal. He stood on the stone steps. There were people in front of him, and there were also people behind him. He looked at Lan Rue and the others. Everyone was still there, but there was a pained look on their faces. Zichun was slightly stunned. Wasn't this what he saw just now? Again? There was a hint of anger in his heart. He already said that illusions were useless against him. The lights around him were disappearing. They were all existences who couldn't walk the Wenshin Road. Moreover, they were disappearing at an extremely fast rate. In the blink of an eye, nearly 1,000 people had been disqualified. At this moment, Zichun saw a person wake up. It was obvious that he had walked the Wenshin Road and was walking forward. A ray of light appeared on his body. The position he was standing at was replaced by another person. It was a prop. Zichun's expression changed again. He had already experienced this scene before. Why was it happening again? Was it an illusion? More props appeared. At this moment, everyone was no longer holding back. After all, the 1,000 spots were about to appear. In the Sagely Mountain City, those who had placed heavy bets cried out in surprise. This scene was somewhat out of their expectations. Fortunately, everything was under control. Those who were able to enter the top 30, and those who had the most support, had yet to be eliminated. The Shishan brothers were very nervous. While everyone else was using their props, Zichun didn't do anything else. He didn't even pay attention to his surroundings. Instead, he had a puzzled and doubtful look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. This made the two of them very worried. If someone used a prop on Zichun, he wouldn't be able to react in time given his current state. Sensing the disappearing figures around him, Zichun found that he couldn't differentiate reality from illusion. At this moment, Pangchong suddenly opened his eyes. His face was filled with pain. At this moment, there was also a look of guilt on his face. He looked at Zichun and said, "I'm sorry." In the next moment, his figure disappeared. He had left. When he first saw this scene, it was Shang Luan who snapped his fingers. Pangchong disappeared first. Now, Pangchong had also left, but Shang Luan didn't appear. He remembered that the second person to be eliminated was Noah. Just as this thought appeared in Zichun's mind, he saw that Noah had also opened his eyes. Before he could say anything, his figure had already disappeared. Zichun's expression changed again. The third person to be eliminated was Lan Hongyi. "Zichun, you have to do your best. I'll be leaving first." Lan Hongyi's voice suddenly rang out. Her body was constantly fading. This was a sign that she was disappearing. Zichun's pupils suddenly shrank. This was exactly the same as what he had seen before. The only difference was that Shang Luan didn't appear. Naturally, that finger wasn't there. Then, who was it after Lan Hongyi? Zichun recalled that it was Shang Luan who had launched a sneak attack on him. In other words, he was the fourth person to disappear. Just as this thought arose in his mind, Zichun reflexively disappeared from his spot. The moment his body disappeared, more than a dozen beams of light descended from the sky and landed on the place where Zichun had been standing. These attacks were all launched by Shang Luan, as well as the people standing beside him. At this moment, Shang Luan, who had launched a sneak attack on Zichun, had a cold smile on his face. But soon, this cold smile froze. Their attacks all missed their target. Zichun appeared in another direction. His heart palpitated as he looked at Shang Luan. He saw nearly 100 beams of light descending from the sky and engulfing Shang Luan. The two of them looked at each other. Zichun's eyes were filled with confusion. Chapter 38. Under Zichen's gaze, many attacks fell from the sky, drowning Shang Luan and the people he brought with him. Shang Luan did not dodge, or rather, he did not have time to dodge. Under everyone's gaze, Shang Luan wanted to sneak up on Zichen and deal with him first. However, no one expected that at the same time, more people would seize the opportunity to launch sneak attacks on Shang Luan. There were no accidents or miracles. Shang Luan, who was drowned by the lights of the props, and the people he brought with him disappeared after the energy dissipated. They had been eliminated. Shang Luan had been eliminated. There were less than 50 contestants left out of more than 15,000 contestants. Zichen, who was puzzled, was stunned when Shang Luan disappeared. However, he soon guessed something and had an answer in his heart. The answer made his heart turn cold, and he could not help but shudder. The bustling Sagely Mountain city suddenly became very quiet. It was as if the bustling city had become a dead city at this moment. Shang Luan, who was the most likely candidate for first place in this test, was actually eliminated. He did not even make it into the top 30. After a short silence, there was an uproar. This was too surprising. Since Shang Luan was eliminated in advance, those who had bet on Shang Luan were destined to lose everything. For a moment, some people could not accept this blow and directly fainted. At this moment, many people lost their family fortune because they had bet on Shang Luan. In this city, more than 60% of the people who participated in the bet on Shang Luan. Some people were more conservative. It did not matter if Shang Luan got first place or not. As long as he could make it into the top 30, they would make a profit. Now, Shang Luan did not even make it into the top 30. He had been utterly defeated and lost everything. Compared to most of the people around them who were in despair, the Shishan brothers were greatly relieved. Zichen's dodge was like a stroke of genius. Since he had dodged Shang Luan's sneak attack, his chances of making it into the top 30 were naturally higher. Zichen's expression kept changing because he had vaguely guessed the real purpose of Shang Luan's appearance in the casino. He had deliberately appeared in a high-profile manner, and then deliberately placed a bet that he would win. Lan Hongyi had very appropriately cooperated with him, so he had placed a bet that he would win first place. If Lan Hongyi hadn't deliberately ridiculed him at that time, Shang Luan would have deliberately found an excuse to buy himself first place. Zichen didn't know anything else, but he was very clear about one thing. A lot of people had bet on Shang Luan this time. At first, he was surprised. If Shang Luan had really become number one, then the gambling house would have lost a lot of money this time. Now he understood. When he entered this place, Shang Luan had never thought of getting first place. He had never even thought of getting into the top 30. This was a trap that targeted all gamblers. Furthermore, Shang Luan clearly knew that he was going to be eliminated, so he made a move against him. It was obvious that he wanted to disqualify him before he left. This was a real thing, not an illusion. But what was with the illusion that he saw earlier? If he hadn't seen what had happened before, he wouldn't have been able to react at all. Perhaps he would have already been disqualified. Seeing this trap, Zichen had no way to break it. Everything was already over. Those who had placed a lot of bets on Shang Luan were destined to lose everything. At this moment, the lights of the props were still shining. Everyone was attacking each other. Zichen's side was a little too quiet. There were only 4 people left on Zichen's side. Zichen didn't continue to move forward. Instead, he silently watched the people fighting. Of course, that was if this was considered a battle. The number of people was still decreasing. At this moment, several attacks came whistling over. The people on Zichen's side were finally affected. However, because Zichen hadn't bought a single item, he was only on the receiving end of the attacks, but he couldn't fight back. An attack landed on Zichen's body. Zichen suddenly felt his body become heavy, as if he was carrying something heavy on his back. However, he didn't move from his original spot, so the pressure wasn't too great. This was the first time he truly felt the power of the props. It wasn't as scary as he had imagined. It was still within an acceptable range. However, for some reason, people were disappearing one after another. This made Zichen very puzzled. When Lan Rue couldn't hold on any longer, he opened his eyes. He glanced at Zichen and said, "Take care," before disappearing. Just as Lan Rue disappeared, the lights of the props around them disappeared as well. Zichen looked over, and saw that there were only 30 people left. At this point, 30 people had been decided. The outside world was in an uproar. There were too many unexpected things today. Apart from Shangluan, there were more than a dozen people who should have been able to get a place, but they were all disqualified. Of the 30 people now, less than half of them could be called by name. However, regardless of whether they were famous or not, they were now the focus of attention. Each of them had their own special image. Outside a gambling house, the Shishan brothers were shouting excitedly. They formed a sharp contrast with the gloomy and suicidal people around them. This time, not only did they bet all their money on Zichun, but they also borrowed a lot from outside. Zichun successfully entered the top 30. Their profits would at least increase by 5 times. How rich was this? If I knew this would happen, I would have pawned my head in exchange for more blue crystal coins to bet. Shishan's younger brother said regretfully. Take it slow. This is just an appetizer. Shishan's older brother was also grinning from ear to ear. Behind him, the people who followed them were so excited that their bodies were trembling. They had also bet all their money. This kind of return was much faster than being a bandit. Moreover, there was no danger to their lives. Compared to the excited Shishan brothers, the eyes of the people around them were cold, as if they wanted to eat someone. The top 30 had been decided, and the showdown of props had come to an end. There was still no end to the stone steps ahead. Obviously, they still had to continue climbing. However, no one moved. Obviously, no one wanted to be the first cannon fodder. Therefore, the 30 people were in a stalemate. The gravity on Zichin's body disappeared. He walked forward. Long Guming and Shanya followed behind him. Anyway, the 3 of them did not have any props. It did not matter if they left sooner or later. They would not affect the others. Seeing Zichun and the other 2 move, many people's faces lit up. They subconsciously tightened their grip on the props in their hands. It was great that there was someone taking the lead. At least they did not have to worry about being behind because fulgurating shadows could change their position at any time. After stepping onto a new step, Zichen's expression changed slightly. Chapter 38-39. Zichun saw a towering mountain peak, and he was standing at the foot of it. As far as the eye could see, the stone steps were like ladders that extended up into the clouds. There were countless stone steps, at least tens of thousands of steps. An old man stood at the foot of the stone steps and looked at Zichun with a smile. Welcome to the cloud stairs and congratulations on reaching the top 30. Zichun looked at the old man in front of him and said, as long as I reach the top, the mission will be considered complete, right? The old man said with a smile, in fact, even if you retreat, the mission will still be considered complete. You've already obtained the qualifications and entered the top 30, so it's not a bad idea to give up now. Zichun shook his head. The old man asked curiously, do you still want to enter the top 20 or the top 10? Zichun shook his head again and said, I've never thought about it, but since I'm here, I naturally have to go up. The old man nodded slightly, but the smile on his face did not fade. Then you have to be careful. This is the Wenshin Road, and it's full of thorns and tribulations. It's not easy to walk. Let's take a look first. Zichun walked forward, and under the old man's gaze, he walked up the cloud stairs. However, just as he took a step, he suddenly looked back at the old man. You won't attack me, right? No one can attack you when you're on the cloud stairs. If you don't want to go, just retreat, the old man said. Only then did Zichun nod his head in satisfaction and walk up to him. A wind appeared, blowing down from above, bringing with it a sense of coldness. Zichun subconsciously shrank his body and continued to walk forward. At the same time, Shanya also arrived at the foot of the mountain and saw the old man that Zichun saw, but she was not in the same space as Zichun. The old man said the same thing, but Shanya ignored him and walked forward. Actually, you don't have to do this, because if you quit now, you won't lose anything and won't suffer. Shanya, who was about to reach the cloud stairs, turned back to look at the old man and said, Thank you for the reminder. She stepped on the cloud stairs, and ripples of light appeared under her feet. In the next moment, her figure disappeared. The smile on the old man's face froze. He immediately lifted his head and looked up. Shanya was standing at the peak of the mountain. Her beautiful face was filled with vigilance. Because this was the top of the mountain and she had only taken one step, it was impossible to reach the heavens in a single step. So what was the point of all this? The old man looked at Shania, who was standing at the top. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. He stood there in a daze, as if he had been petrified. He only reacted when Shanya's alert voice rang out. The next moment, he appeared in front of Shanya. Although he tried his best to make his expression calm, the shock in his eyes could not be concealed. "Is this your doing?" Shanya stared at the old man warily. The elder exclaimed, "Congratulations, you are the first to complete the test." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man disappeared. A gap appeared in the sky, and countless light rain poured down. Shanya bathed in the light rain, her long hair fluttering and her dress dancing. On the stone steps of Wenxin Path, Shanya, who was walking on the right side of Zichun, had her own independent image in the sagely mountain city. However, no one paid attention to this beautiful girl, so they did not pay much attention to her sudden disappearance. They only felt a little regretful. Shanya disappeared into thin air behind Zichun. Was she eliminated? The Shishan brothers were puzzled. Shanya's image also disappeared. There were 29 images left. In these images, everyone was still climbing the stairs, and no other abnormalities could be seen. Lan Guming looked at the endless stone steps and raised her eyebrows slightly. She had been climbing the stairs all day, and even she was impatient. The old man said the same thing. Naturally, he was mainly trying to dissuade her. Lan Guming said, "Let's go and see. If I can't take it anymore, I will leave." The old man nodded. However, this time, he did not move his gaze away. Instead, he continued to stare at Lan Guming's back. There was a hint of expectation in his aged eyes, or perhaps it could be said that he was looking forward to it. Lan Guming took the first step, and countless blue lights suddenly bloomed from her body. Then, a pair of blue wings appeared. This was the true form of the heavenly maiden. The old man's eyes lit up. Perhaps it was because of the light. Lan Guming's wings flapped behind her, and her body rose into the air. She did not walk on the stone steps, but flew. Looking at the blue light in the air, the old man's expression suddenly became excited, and his heart was filled with emotions. She really came. With a light flap of her wings, Lan Guming landed on the top of the mountain. This was much easier than she had imagined. "Congratulations." The old man's voice came from behind her. There was an uncontrollable excitement in it. "Please accept the baptism." He used respectful words. A rain of light fell from the sky. Lan Guming bathed in the rain of light. Her wings shone with infinite light, and she floated like a fairy. Looking at this scene, the old man was excited and filled with emotions. However, at the same time, there was a hint of doubt. One could reach the heavens in a single step, and the other was the heavenly maiden. Why were they willing to stand behind an ordinary person? In his eyes, Zichun could not be more ordinary. This was because he did not have any magical powers, nor did he have any extraordinary talent. Let alone reaching the heavens in a single step, he did not even have the necessary level skipping. How could such an ordinary person have such extraordinary people by his side? He was puzzled and decided to go and take a look. At this moment, Zichun was already at level 1000. At this moment, a gust of wind blew from above, and he fell back 100 levels. In fact, it was not a gust of wind, but a prop that fell on him. The other party used fulgurating shadows. Because the two people beside Zichun had disappeared, the people behind him were worried that Zichun would also disappear, so they used a prop in advance. Zichun, who had retreated, continued to climb the stairs. He did not say a word, and his expression did not change. After about 1,000 levels, he suddenly felt his body become heavy, and he felt like he could not move an inch. It was the prop Mount Crush. In the eyes of everyone in the sagely mountain city, those people were all on the same stairs, but their speed was different. At this moment, there were people constantly using props in an attempt to get their rankings higher. Zichun, who was originally in the first place, was now in the 15th place. In the 28th place was a young man in black. No one knew his name. He was just like Zichun, a newcomer. At the same time, he was the only person besides Zichun who did not use any props. He was like a dark horse, quietly making his way into the top 30. At this moment, he looked at the people in front of him expressionlessly. When he saw Zichen, who had been retreating, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. Chapter 38-40. Walking on the stone steps, what Zichen saw was not a complete set of stone steps, but various places. For example, a sea of flowers, a lake, high mountains, flowing water, clear skies, and white clouds. His walk was not boring at all, nor was it difficult. It was as if he was sightseeing, admiring the flowers and the moon. Occasionally, there would be wind, rain, and pressure from an unknown place that would fall on his body, making him feel a little embarrassed, but that was all. As Zichen walked, his mind was empty. It was as if he had forgotten his identity and that this was a test. He was like a true traveler, looking at the scenery along the way. He enjoyed everything he saw along the way, but at the same time, he silently endured the disasters that appeared along the way. The old man silently followed, but still did not find anything special about Zichen. Until a certain moment, Zichen suddenly stopped in his tracks. The old man was startled. Was he going to give up? Zichen turned around and said, "Why are you following me?" There was no one in front of Zichen. He did not know who he was talking to, or if he was talking to the air. "I can't see you, but I can feel your presence." Zichen continued, "You're right behind me, following me." The old man's voice sounded, "This is a path without a top. I'm here to advise you to give up." I understand." Zichen nodded and continued to climb to the top. "You're not giving up?" The old man's voice sounded again. "Do you believe it?" Zichen suddenly asked. "What?" The old man was puzzled. "Do you believe a path without a top?" Zichen calmly said, "If it's not an illusion array, if it's a real place, as long as I keep walking, I'll definitely reach the end." The old man looked at Zichen with a strange gaze. This was not an illusion array, but the path did not have a top. He was not lying. The old man smiled. "If you say the stone steps have a top, then where's the top? You've been walking for so long. Have you seen it?" Zichen smiled and said, "The peak of the mountain is right below us." "What?" The old man was stunned. Zichen took a step forward and disappeared from his original spot. He did not appear at the top of the mountain, but at the top of the stone steps, or rather, his consciousness had returned from the space where the old man was. In the world where Zichen had disappeared, it was raining cats and dogs. The rain was composed of pure energy. Did he walk the Wenshin Road? When the old man saw this, his expression changed drastically. On the stone steps, Zichen, who was walking in the middle, suddenly emitted a powerful aura. This aura spread out like a storm. Some of the existences closer to Zichen immediately retreated. There were even a few existences that were bitterly holding on, but they disappeared under this storm. There were less than 20 people left. Zichen had advanced once again. His vision regained clarity, and he saw that there were not many people left in the surroundings. At this moment, everyone was looking at him warily. Zichen just glanced at them and continued to walk forward. His steps were light and relaxed. The person next to him seemed to feel a strong threat from Zichen and immediately used an item. The light from the item fell on Zichen's body. Zichen felt the pressure. Immediately after, the others also reacted and used their items on Zichen. Clearly, they wanted to eliminate him first. Countless lights fell on Zichen's body, causing Zichen to feel a great deal of pressure. In the outside world, the Shishan brothers saw this scene and cursed at how shameless they were. Just as Zichen was about to be eliminated, a beam of light suddenly appeared in the sky and fell on Zichen's body, dispelling all of the negative energy. Immediately after, rain fell from the beam of light. It was a rain of energy that irrigated Zichen's body and nourished his soul. His state of mind seemed to have been cleansed by a layer of mysterious energy, and he felt a sense of cleanliness and ease. This was the reward for successfully walking the Wenshin Road. Unfortunately, very few people knew about it. Many people were shouting that it was cheating because this was almost an invincible item. Zichen continued to walk forward. The light rain followed Zichen and fell only for him. The others around him were shocked by this scene. Many people were unwilling to give up and tried to use their items again. However, when they fell on Zichun, it was useless. At this moment, Zichun seemed to be blessed with an invincible defensive light shield that could ignore all the attacks from the items. The attacks that fell on Zichun gradually decreased. It was not that everyone felt that their attacks were ineffective and gave up, but the number of people around him kept decreasing, one after another. Soon, the top 10 were revealed. Then, the top 5 were revealed. The whole city was in an uproar because there were too many dark horses. Those who had high hopes of getting a good ranking were eliminated one by one. In the end, only Zichun and a young man in black were left. Almost no one knew the young man's name, yet he had reached second place. Logically speaking, the nameless young man should be happy. However, his face was extremely gloomy at the moment. His eyes were fixed on Zichun's back. At this moment, in a certain direction of the Sagely Mountain City, many people were paying attention to the young man. They all looked very nervous. Nobody knew that a huge sum of blue star dollars had been bet on the young man in black when the betting was about to end. The young man's name was Luotsong. Very few people knew him, yet the people who had placed their bets on Luotsong to become first place. If Luotsong really became first place, the Sagely Mountain Casino would have to pay a heavy price, even if they did not go bankrupt. Among these people, there was a familiar face. It was Shang Luan, who had not even made it into the top 30. He was also paying attention to Luotsong. If he had bet a huge amount on himself to become first place, then the amount he had bet on Luotsong was more than 10 times what he had bet on him. At this moment, his gaze was very cold. He did not expect that the fellow who made him feel uncomfortable the moment he saw him would actually be able to reach this step. The rain of light on Zichun's body was disappearing. Luotsong's eyes flashed coldly as he started to use his tools. Sacred talismans landed on Zichun's body one after another. The first one was the shape-shifting technique. Zichun and Luotsong's positions changed. Then, various gravity sacred talismans appeared, causing Zichun's movements to become extremely slow. However, his expression did not change in the slightest. After all, these tools were just external objects. Although they would affect him, they would not be enough to eliminate him. The gravitational force pressed on his body, causing him to move forward slowly. The distance between him and Luotsong was getting wider and wider, but he did not care at all. As the negative energy around him disappeared, Zichun's speed recovered, and he once again closed the distance between him and Luotsong. Soon, the two of them were side by side, and Zichun showed signs of overtaking him. "Why do you have to do this?" Luotsong looked at Zichun and said, "It's not easy for you to make it this far. You can leave now." Zichun ignored Luotsong. Looking at Zichun, who was moving forward, Luotsong said again, "If you lack blue crystal coins, you can tell me. No one will give you any benefits if you work so hard. Besides, the casino has long been closed, so you can't place any bets." Zichun still ignored Luotsong. "You're courting death." Chapter 38:41. After a round of holy talismans, Zichun arrived behind Luotsong again. He looked at Luotsong in front of him and fell into deep thought. Zichun had looked at the list of favorites to win the championship. This person was not among them. Luotsong was just like him, new to this place. It should be a great honor to be in the top 2. He should have left long ago. However, not only did Luotsong not leave, but he also kept using items. He even vaguely mentioned blue crystal coins. It was as if he would agree if Luotsong said any number. Why? Zichun suddenly thought of Shang Luan. Could it be that this was also a deliberate trap? The negative energy in his body finally dissipated. Zichun caught up again and was about to overtake Luotsong. Just like the previous round of holy talismans, Luotsong used another round of threats and temptations. It was not effective, so he used holy talismans again. Zichun fell behind and overtook Luotsong for the 3rd time. Then, he fell behind for the 4th time and overtook Luotsong for the 5th time. In the entire city, only the two of them were left. When many people saw Luotsong using items, they were reminded of their own crushing defeat and gnashed their teeth in hatred. "Brother, you can do it. Kill that guy with the items." "That's right. That despicable guy used so many items. This guy came prepared. He must be up to no good. Kill him." For a moment, the city was filled with cheers. Everyone began to cheer for Zichun. Of course, the crowd was not absolutely supporting Zichun. They just did not want to see Luozong become the champion. God knows how many bets this guy had secretly placed on himself. Everyone had suffered a great loss. Naturally, they did not want anyone else to win. As for Zichun, he did not even use a single item. They believed that he did not bet on himself to be the champion. Among them, the Shishan brothers were probably the only ones who truly hoped that Zichun would become the champion. Why do you have to do this? I know you are already an arrow at the end of its flight. What's the point of showing off in front of me? Seeing Zichun catch up again, Luozong said, "You can tell me what you lack. Since you are second, I will definitely help you." Zichun could not be bothered to pay attention to the other party. After he had walked the Wenshin road, this confrontation had already become meaningless. He continued to walk on this path because he wanted to see if the previous rain of light would appear again. This time, his spirit had been cleansed. When his body and mind were clear, even his strength seemed to have increased by a lot. This was a good thing. If he could do it again, Zichun would definitely be happy. However, after many attempts, he was disappointed when he failed to trigger the rain of light again. At this time, Luozong had already used 10 Saint Talismans on him, which showed how well prepared he was. Not to mention other things, just the cost of these items was already an astronomical figure. When he was about to overtake Luozong for the 10th time, Luozong said weakly, "You clearly can't go on anymore, so why bother? The first place is just an empty title. It doesn't mean anything to you." Zichun, who had been ignoring the other party all this time, glanced at Luozong and said, "What you said makes sense." Luozong's eyes immediately lit up, as if he had seen hope. Zichun continued, "Then I will wait for you at the peak. If you can reach there, the first place will be yours." As his voice fell, the aura around Zichun changed. As he stepped down, the stone steps in front of Zichun changed. After only 10 steps, he reached the peak. Countless rays of light were released from the peak, illuminating Zichun. Luozong's eyes also lit up. He did not expect to be so close to the peak. He, who was already exhausted, seemed to be filled with strength at this moment. He walked forward, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Not only did the distance between him and Zichun not decrease, but it also increased. From the original 10 steps, it was now more than 20 steps. Luozong was anxious and took out another Saint Talisman, form displacement swap. As long as the two of them switched positions, he would be first. Buzz. The Saint Talisman was activated, and a ray of light flew forward. It was clearly less than 30 steps away from Zichun, but the ray of light seemed to pass through space and was met with great resistance. Before it reached Zichun, it directly dissipated. Luozong's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He used form displacement swap again, but it was still useless. Zichun's body released infinite light, like a true god, and all the evil between heaven and earth retreated. After the Saint Talisman lost its effect, a powerful pressure descended from the sky. Luozong's body swayed in the face of this pressure. Saint Talisman after Saint Talisman appeared and landed on his body. This was the blessing of many forces. He had paid a huge price to exchange these Saint Talismans, but they could not resist this pressure at all. In the end, he let out a roar of unwillingness and disappeared from the stone steps. Cheers erupted in the Sagely Mountain City. When Luozong disappeared, other than being unwilling to accept the outcome, there was also a sense of relief in his heart. This made Zichun suspect that in addition to placing a huge bet on the first place, he had also placed a bet on the top 3. After all, he had to be more prudent. At the same time, those who were paying attention to Luozong also had unwillingness in their eyes. However, none of them were too angry. Even if they did not get first place, as long as they were in the top 3, they would not suffer a loss this time. At this moment, cheers sounded in the city again, and there was an uproar. Several people raised their heads again and found that the original image had now become 3. Besides Zichun, there were 2 women standing on his left and right. How did it become 3 people? Several people were dumbfounded. Sheng Luan stared at the sky in disbelief, looking at Zichun and the other 2. Since there were 3 people, didn't that mean that Luozong was 4th this time? Amidst the uproar in the city, several angry roars sounded. This time, they had completely miscalculated. Looking at Shanya and Lan Ming, who appeared beside him, Zichun was very surprised. He thought that the two had already been eliminated. He did not expect them to suddenly appear and stand on the mountain peak. Being able to stand here was enough to prove that the two of them had successfully stepped on the mountain peak. He did not know what method they had used. At this moment, an old voice sounded. The trial is over. There are 3 people who have reached the mountain peak. According to the ranking, the first is Zichun, the second is Shanya, and the third is Lan Ming. As the voice sounded, Zichun and the other 2 disappeared. In the next moment, the 3 of them appeared in the square. The surrounding exclamations and uproars were still ringing and did not dissipate for a long time. At the same time, there were also cold gazes from all around, landing on Zichun. Chapter 38:42. After the test, Zichun and the other 2 returned to the open space where they had been standing. They were surrounded by people who had not left yet. The sage heavenly mirror in the sky was still shining brightly, and it had yet to disappear. The people around them were all eliminated participants. They were all staring at Zichun and the other 2 in amazement. These 3 unknown fellows from unknown origins were actually able to reach such heights. It was truly inconceivable. Among these people, Luo Tsang's eyes were cold and full of resentment, as if he was going to devour them. Their plan, which they had carefully set up, had failed and caused them to suffer heavy losses. Because of their overconfidence, they had placed their bets on the top 3 to prevent any accidents. They had placed all their bets on the first place. If he had won the first place, the Sagely Mountain Casino would have had to pay a huge price. But now, he was in 4th place and had lost everything. Amazing! That's amazing! Lan Rue and the others walked over, each of them grinning from ear to ear. When they had placed their bets before, they had all bet on Zichun being the first. Although the amount of blue crystal coins they had bet was not many, they had won in multiples. Naturally, they had made a lot of money. Relatively speaking, Zichun was the most conservative one. He had only placed his bets on himself to enter the top 10. Let's go and get our reward. Zichun was also in a good mood. He had already obtained the qualifications, and there would be someone to arrange everything later. There was no point in continuing to stay here, and he would only be looked down upon by others. Along the way, Zichun noticed many cold gazes directed at him, but he did not care. These people were most likely the ones who had suffered great losses. In the Sagely Mountain City, a group of about a dozen people was sitting in an extremely mysterious conference hall. They were all old, and only one of them was a middle-aged man, sitting in the last seat. If Zichun were here, he would have recognized this man. He was Wu Yud, the man who had been promoting props to Zichun. He looked very scholarly and immoral. The atmosphere in the conference room was a little strange. No one spoke, and the air seemed to be full of pressure. The old man sitting at the head of the table had a dignified look in his eyes. "Tell me, what is going on?" Looking at the silent crowd, the old man in the lead said. He was the person at the helm of the Sacred Mountain Gambling House, the one with the most authority. He was fully in charge of the opening multiplier for this test. This should be considered an accident. After all, too many people have come this time, and our intelligence is not comprehensive enough for the time being. After a moment of silence, the old man in second place said, "Moreover, there is no limit to the number of willing participants. Anyone who was confident in getting a place could place their bets as they wished. I have to say that our luck is pretty good this time. If that guy called Zichun also bet a large amount of money on himself, and if he bet first, then we will really suffer a great loss this time." As the old man spoke, the other old men also nodded in agreement, feeling very fortunate. That's right. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. The helmsman's gaze swept around before finally landing on Wu Yud. "What do you think of this?" he asked. In the next moment, everyone's eyes fell on Wu Yud. The position of one's seat represented one's status. Wu Yud's seat was at the back, which meant that his status was the lowest. However, he was the youngest, which often represented unlimited potential and future. Facing the obviously scrutinizing gazes around him, he did not mind at all. He said indifferently, A large amount of money only came in at the moment when the gambling house was closed. It is obvious that this was done deliberately. Perhaps his original intention was to make a big profit, but there could also be other motives. Wu Yi tapped the table with his finger and said, "Moreover, there are too many dark horses this time. If it weren't for those few accidents, perhaps our gambling house would have already closed down." "What nonsense are you spouting? Our sacred mountain gambling house exists together with the sacred mountain. What is a mere bet? How can we close down?" The old man in second place rebuked angrily. Wu Yi shrugged and said in a calm voice, "Perhaps so, but the chief steward should not be able to sit in that position anymore. Well, when that time comes, I think that you, the second steward, are the most suitable for that position." As soon as he said this, many people's faces changed. It was an understatement, but there was a hidden meaning behind it. The chief steward's expression did not change, as if he did not hear Wu Yi's words. As for the second steward, he was furious. He slammed the table and stood up. He pointed at Wu Yi with his stubby finger and said, "Ignorant child, how dare you sow discord here?" Wu Yi yawned and said in a wrong tone, "Second steward, you have wronged me. I was only offering a possibility. I did not mean to sow discord. Moreover, with the good relationship between you and the chief steward, it is not something that can be broken up with just a few words from others, right?" You, the second steward, was so angry that his body was trembling. That pair of angry eyes looked as if they wanted to tear Wu Yi apart. "All right, everyone, stop talking." The chief steward waved his hand and said with a sharp gaze, "This matter must be thoroughly investigated. Find out what's going on." "Investigate my ass. Is there a need to investigate such an obvious method? Do you still need to ask what is going on?" An indifferent and somewhat sarcastic voice suddenly came from the entrance of the conference hall. This was the meeting room specially set up by the Sacred Mountain Gambling House. It was extremely secluded. The people who came were the higher-ups of the Sacred Mountain Gambling House. Ordinary people would not be able to come in. So, how did the owner of this voice come in? How did he come in? Everyone turned around and saw a sloppy-looking brawny man leaning against the door. The brawny man held a pot of wine in his hand. He was the undrunk immortal of the Undrunk restaurant. He was quite famous. Under the gaze of everyone, he burped, and the smell of alcohol filled the air. "Where did you come from, drunkard? How dare you speak nonsense here?" The second steward, who had nowhere to vent his anger, pointed at the brawny man and reprimanded him. On the other hand, the chief steward's expression, which had remained unchanged all this while, changed slightly upon seeing the burly man. Wu Yi stood up and bowed slightly to the brawny man, saying, "Young master is back." "Young master?" The others were stunned. Where did this young master come from? Chapter 38:43. The person who had arrived was Oli. That Oli who loved to drink. That Oli who had been a coachman for the entire journey. That Oli who knew fighting techniques. He was the one who had guided Zi-Chen here and hinted him to participate in the bet. He was also the one who had brought Wu Yi to see Zi-Chen. Oli walked closer and casually threw the empty wine jar on the ground. His breath reeked of alcohol as he said, "So many years have passed. You have all grown old. It wasn't easy for you to recognize me. I thought you were old and dim-sighted. You were about to be buried in peace." Old and dim-sighted? Buried in peace? Who do you think you are? You dare to lecture us? One of them angrily reprimanded. However, he was quickly pulled back by the person next to him, hinting him not to speak. This was a high-level member who had joined later. He didn't know the history of the Sacred Mountain Gambling House. "You have finally returned." The senior manager looked at Oli with a complicated expression. The second manager snorted and said, "It has been so many years. We thought you had died in some corner. I didn't expect you to still be alive." Oli swept a glance at the second manager and said in ridicule, "You fat pig, what do you know? You are courting death." The second manager's eyes emitted a cold light. "Do you really think you are the young master of the Sacred Mountain Gambling House? Let me tell you, this gambling house has already changed its name. The moment you lost the qualifications and lost, the Sacred Mountain Gambling House no longer belonged to your own clan. Oli looked at the second manager and said indifferently, "Don't worry. I didn't come here today to ask for the gambling house. I came here to ask for the extra reward that belongs to us." "What extra reward?" the second manager asked coldly. Oli said, "The extra reward that belongs to Zichun. If he hadn't taken first place, I believe you would have paid a lot of blood this time, right? My request isn't high. Open the Sacred Mountain Gambling House and let him in to take a look." "Open the Sacred Mountain Gambling House? You are crazy. We only have one quota." The second manager glared at Oli. Oli looked at the senior manager. He obviously knew that the other party had the final say here. When Zichen and his group went to redeem their rewards, it caused quite a stir. For many people, the scene of Zichen placing his bet that day was still vivid in their minds. If it wasn't for Shang Luan's sudden appearance and his confidence that he would be the champion, they would have bet a large sum of blue crystal coins on Zichen. Unfortunately, they had placed their bets on Shang Luan. In the end, that damned guy actually didn't even enter the top 30. After receiving their rewards, the group went straight to the Undrunk restaurant, intending to have a good meal there. As they sat down, exquisite dishes were served, and everyone was given a jar of Drunken Immortal. It was as if they had been prepared in advance. "We haven't ordered anything yet, right?" Lan Hongyi looked at him. The one who served the dishes was a very beautiful maid. She smiled and said, "Someone came over to greet us, so we've already made reservations for you. He said that as long as you guys are here, the dishes and wine can be served." "You know us?" Lan Hongyi asked again. The smile on the maid's face did not diminish. She said, "Nowadays, there shouldn't be many people who don't know you in this city, right?" This time, Zichen's group of 3 had obtained the top 3 spots. Back then, their voices had spread throughout the entire city. Moreover, their images had also been seen by everyone. Perhaps no one knew Lan Hongyi, but Zichen, Lan Gumeng, and Shanya were currently very famous. Zichen smiled at the maid and thanked her. The maid nodded and smiled at Zichen. She was not nervous at meeting the champion of this test. Instead, her expression was very relaxed. After leaving Zichen's room, the girl walked out and stuck out her tongue. She did not go back. Instead, she walked towards the top floor. There was a separate room there. An old man was sitting there, drinking tea. Tea was a very rare thing in this world. When the girl came in, the old man looked up at her and smiled kindly. "How is it? He doesn't look any different. He's just an ordinary person. I think he was just lucky." The girl sat opposite the old man and poured herself a cup of tea. "An ordinary person?" The old man shook his head and smiled. "Do you think an ordinary person can foil the schemes of those scheming people? What do you mean?" The girl was puzzled. The old man smiled. "I just heard that an unimaginable amount of blue astral dollars was bet on a person called Luo Tsang when the gambling house was closed. More than 90% of the money bet on Luo Tsang being the champion." "Who is Luo Tsang? Is he very famous?" the girl asked doubtfully. "A person from an unknown place is the 4th champion this time. If it weren't for Zichen's group, the Sacred Mountain Gambling House would have changed owners again." "Changed owners again? Isn't that the Sacred Mountain's own?" "His surname used to be O. 200 years ago, something happened and the Sacred Mountain took over. Now, Old Chun is just an agent. Grandpa Chun is just an agent." "Little girl, remove the word only. Even if it's just an agent, it's still very impressive. Speaking of which, Old Chun really has to thank that child this time. If he hadn't become the champion, this small test would have made him lose the qualifications to be an agent." The old man looked at his granddaughter in front of him and said, "Do you think he's not well prepared when it comes to the replacement of an agent? That Zichen was able to surpass him and become the champion. How could he be an ordinary person?" The girl asked, "Is that why Grandpa wants me to see him?" The old man shook his head and his expression suddenly became serious. "Not only that, but I suspect that he has really walked the Wenqin road." The girl said unconcernedly, "Isn't it just a test? Grandpa, didn't you say that it didn't matter whether I participated or not?" "It's not the same. The Wenqin road is meaningless to most people, but if you can really walk it, it will be a great opportunity and test," the old man said with some emotion. "The Wenqin road used to be very famous and very important. Unfortunately, people are impetuous now, and no one is willing to experience it. Over time, it became an insignificant test. The girl couldn't listen to it anymore. She obviously didn't want to hear the old man talk about the past. She immediately interrupted and said, okay, I know. Grandpa, you should look forward. Isn't the current change very good? Even without the One-Sheen Road, didn't the sacred mountain still cultivate many powerhouses? The old man also knew that his granddaughter was impatient. He chuckled and tactfully ended the topic. However, the old man was very emotional. Was the old way of doing things really outdated and unlikable? Grandpa, I didn't participate in the One-Sheen Road. What about the next quota? The girl obviously didn't forget about the important matter. It's very simple. Buy a quota. Isn't this what you young people like to see the most? You don't need to spend too much effort to get the same thing. The old man said. The girl stood up and said, why waste useless time on something that can be solved with blue crystal coins? After saying that, the girl left. Oli walked into the private room uninvited. Zichen glanced at him and said, no one invited you, right? Oli chuckled and said, congratulations. A maid followed behind Oli. She carried a dozen jars of undrunk immortal and placed them on the table one by one. Oli pointed at the jars of undrunk immortal with a smile on his face. Drink as much as you want. These are my treat. Zichun will pay. Zichun rolled his eyes. He really didn't treat himself as an outsider. After opening a jar for himself, the smile on Oli's face disappeared and he said seriously, Zichun, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're too cautious. I told you to bet on first place, but you didn't listen. Now, you've lost too much. Otherwise, my undrunk immortal in my next life would have been settled. Oli, I have tolerated you for a long time. Do you have any shame? Chapter 38:44. As long as there's wine to drink, what's the point of having a face? Zichun was enraged, but Oli's expression remained calm and indifferent, without the slightest hint of anger. This made Zichun very speechless, and he couldn't get angry. Let's not talk about other things first. Kid, you have to thank me this time because I got something good for you. In other words, it's a great opportunity. Oli ate a mouthful of food and said mysteriously, what is it? Zichun asked casually, not paying much attention to it. Brat, open your dog eyes wide and listen carefully. Oli cleared his throat and said, after the test, regardless of whether you succeed or fail, the Sage Realm will open for you. Zichun naturally wouldn't be excited, and his expression didn't change much. He said, just this? Oli rolled his eyes and realized that his emotions were of no use at all. This guy knew nothing about the Sage Realm and didn't know anything about it. It was like playing the lute to a cow. On the other hand, Lan Rue's face revealed a hint of surprise. Is it the Sage Realm that can comprehend anything and is equivalent to the Sage Realm that opens the Sage Realm to the outside world? Oli gave Lan Rue an expression of, you're knowledgeable, and nodded. His expression was naturally proud. Lan Rue said in shock, it can't be? Isn't it said that only people who have made great contributions to the Sage Realm are qualified to obtain that place? It's said that if one is lucky enough, even the top 100 Sage Soul weapons can be obtained. Lan Rue didn't know about this before. He only learned about it when he came here and saw the information that the Lan family had gathered for him. For most people, the Sage Realm of the Sage Realm was a secret because it was never open to the outside world. Thus, it was difficult for outsiders to know about it. The top 100 Sage Soul weapons were very attractive to Zichun because of Yu Yi's companion Spirit Shield. According to Oli, even the current Zichun couldn't break the other party's defense. The companion Spirit Shield's grade was obviously not enough to enter the top 100. Oli said that Zichun couldn't break it because of its amazing defense. But in that unknown Sage Realm, there was actually a ready-made Sage Soul weapon. Could one imagine? Looking at Zichun's changing expression, Oli became complacent. It is said that these slots are never open to the public. Lan Rue looked at Oli. This time, he was really very surprised. Oli was even more pleased with himself. He shook his legs and hummed a little tune. He had an expression that said, hurry up and worship me. Zichun asked, where did you get this spot? Hee hee, a hermit naturally has a brilliant plan. Oli chuckled and was very proud. You're not lying to me, are you? How can you be so powerful? Zichen obviously didn't believe it. Oli smiled sarcastically and said, I'm afraid that I'll scare you to death with my many identities. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about one that will make you pee in your pants. Listen up, kid. Of course, all of you listen up. My true identity is the young master of the Holy Mountain Casino. What? Zichen almost spat out a mouthful of wine. The others also looked at Oli strangely. I said, I'm the young master of the Holy Mountain Casino. Oli said seriously. Zichen laughed so hard that tears flowed out. If you're the young master of the Holy Mountain Casino, then I'm the young master of the undrunk brothel. Oli said with a look of disdain. Kid, you don't know anything, do you? There is no young master in the undrunk brothel, only a young lady. Then I'm that young lady's sweetheart. Zichen obviously didn't believe Oli's words, so he took the opportunity to make fun of him. At this moment, the waitress who served them wine and food first came in. She looked at Zichun with a change in her expression. However, Zichun was laughing at Oli at this moment and didn't notice this scene. If he knew that the woman next to him was the one he was talking about, who knew what he would think? However, before the waitress put down the food and left, Zichun seemed to hear a dissatisfied snort. Of course, the others didn't believe Oli's words either. The young master of the Holy Mountain Casino? What kind of joke was this? Oli didn't mind Zichun's teasing. He said casually, the reason I helped you, kid, is because I think you know how to repay kindness. You have a conscience, you have good morals, you punish evil, you're tall and dashing. Stop. Zichun couldn't laugh anymore and immediately interrupted Oli. After saying so many nice things, Zichun felt uneasy. If you have something to say, say it. Don't flatter me. Heh, this is a phrase I've been searching for a long time. However, seeing how straightforward you are, Oli suddenly wiped the smile off his face and said, if we meet someone who can use the holy battle technique, please help me defeat him. Oli, who had always been frivolous, not only had his expression turned serious, but he had also used the word please at the same time. This was very rare. The smiles on the others' faces also disappeared. They had never seen such a serious Oli before. Holy battle technique? What's that? Zichen asked. Oli said in a deep voice, it's a type of combat technique that can stimulate the Holy Spirit force. The combat technique that the two of us have mastered can stimulate the power of shock. You can think of it as the soul shock force. It's completely different from the Holy Spirit force, but it's not any weaker than the soul shock force. Are you sure I can meet such people? Zichen asked again. You will definitely meet them, Oli said with certainty. Since I can meet them, as long as the difference between our realms isn't too great, I will win. Zichun also gave a very certain answer. As long as I win, it's fine. You must use the thunder battle technique to win and show the world the power of the thunder battle technique. At this moment, Oli's expression was very serious, even solemn. Zichen nodded and said, don't worry, I will do my best to complete the mission. Oli's serious expression suddenly disappeared. He laughed and said, I'm just joking with you. Why take it so seriously? I'm just saying it casually. Who knows if there are any successors of the holy battle technique? You have to know that I spent a lot of effort to find you. Zichen also laughed and said, don't take it seriously. I'm just joking with you. Life is so precious. How can you waste it on fighting? Even if I meet them, I will take the initiative to surrender and quickly run away if I see that the situation is not good. That's more like it. As long as you're alive, you have wine to drink every day. Everything else is nothing. Oli said in agreement and then raised the wine jar. Zichen smiled and raised the wine jar. The sound of clinking could be heard. Everything was said in silence. The wine was finished. Zichen thought of a person. Just the first time he saw that person, he felt like he was facing a great enemy. That was St. Lewin. Could he be the successor of the holy battle technique? P.S. Happy New Year, a new atmosphere. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and have all your wishes come true. Chapter 38:45. All banquets must come to an end, let alone a meal. After filling their stomachs, they left happily. The Shishan brothers had settled all their debts, but they did not show up to meet Zichun. After returning to his residence, Zichun began to think about what Oli had said. Although his tone was very relaxed, Zichun knew very well that Oli was very serious about this matter. And Zichun guessed that his enemy was probably Shang Luan. Early the next morning, someone from the sacred mountain came and gave Zichun a qualification token. He was no different from the others, and his number was the same as before. It was equivalent to changing a token. At the same time, they also told him that the second test would begin in 10 days. Everyone could place their bets, but the odds were not as high as last time. The specific betting rules would be revealed 1 day later. Obviously, after the previous incident, the Sacred Mountain Casino was much more careful this time. There were still 10 days before the second test, but Chun Kai could not sit still. His blue-eyed jade fire beast was still with Zichun, and he could not get it back yet. To him, this was simply a humiliation. What was more unexpected was that Zichun could get first place in the test this time. What should we do now? Chun Kai was anxious. Without the blue-eyed jade fire beast, he was not qualified to join the Sacred Mountain. Lei Chan stood to the side in silence. He had seen Zichun's performance and knew that he couldn't underestimate him. Yui lightly tapped on the table. Clearly, he was also worried about this matter. That person called Shanya had something that he was determined to obtain. But before that, he had to defeat Zichun. Chun Kai was not weak. Once he entered, he would be of great help to him. But the biggest problem now was how to help Chun Kai get a place. For his big plan, he would not do anything in this city. He had even stopped Chun Kai from doing anything. As for the Earth Soul Realm, there were rules to restrict it. Suddenly, Yui thought of someone, and his eyes lit up. He immediately stood up and said, "Wait here for a moment. I'll go look for Shang Luan and see if he has any ideas." San Luan? Lei Chan and Chun Kai were both startled. They had naturally heard of that existence's name. His reputation was extremely high, but this time, he had failed miserably. It was said that he had caused many people to suffer heavy losses. However, it had to be said that with St. Luan's reputation, there was absolutely no problem with their battle prowess. There had always been rumors that St. Luan was likely to be acknowledged by the 3 mountains this time. This was something that had never happened in the past 1,000 years. When the time came, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. It was just that this kind of existence was extremely famous. Chun Kai and Lei Chan did not know him, and they could not even come into contact with him. Yui went to look for Shang Luan. The two of them had met once before, and could be considered to have some friendship. Shang Luan's reputation was great, and Yui's reputation wasn't small either. The fact that the companion spirit shield could be promoted to the 100 soldiers after undergoing the baptism was even more talked about by people. After the two of them exchanged greetings, Yui explained the purpose of her visit. Give a friend a spot? Shang Luan frowned slightly, and a difficult expression appeared on his face. Yui was overjoyed. Since she did not refuse on the spot, it naturally meant that this matter was feasible. It seemed that the rumor that Shang Luan and the Sacred Mountain had a close relationship was true. Yui said, "Actually, he has the right to do so because he has an emerald-eye jade fire beast that is still in its growth stage. Unfortunately, Zichun took it away." "Who are you talking about?" Shang Luan looked at Yui, and the expression in his eyes changed. Zichun, a guy who popped out of nowhere. He was lucky enough to get first place in this test. Yui's face revealed a cold expression. "Although I don't know what kind of luck he had, we will definitely not let him go after entering the Sacred Mountain this time." This time, Yui came to look for Shang Luan because she knew the details of Shang Luan's actions during the elimination. For example, the failure of his sneak attack on Zichun might have led to some conflict between the two. Now, it seemed that her guess was correct. When the name Zichun was mentioned, Shang Luan did not even bother to maintain the necessary shrewdness. "Chun Kai is your friend, so naturally, he is also my friend. If he can guarantee that after entering the Sacred Mountain, he will snatch back the jade-eyed fire beast, then it won't be too difficult to arrange for him to enter the Sacred Mountain and let him obtain a qualification. However, the necessary bribe will still have to be given." Shang Luan said in a deep voice, "After all, this matter involves a lot of power." "Don't worry, brother Shang Luan, you can just say it." Yui's face revealed a touch of joy, and then she said, "By the way, this time, in addition to Chen Kai, I also have a friend who is a descender. It is said that he has a deep hatred for Zichun and also wants to kill him. According to my friend, there are many other descenders like him who want to kill Zichun. Descenders? Shang Luan was slightly stunned. This was a unique existence. He was clearly an outsider, but he had created his own world in this world. That's right. I heard that the mission of many of them is to kill Zichun, Yui said with certainty. Since he is your friend, he is naturally my friend. If there is time, let's meet up. Shang Luan said, to be honest, I also have a grudge with Zichun, and I am also preparing to get rid of him in the Sacred Mountains trial. Yuyi's eyes lit up and she said, that's good. Let's have a good gathering. On the same day, an alliance against Zichun appeared. Everyone's goal was to kill Zichun, but everyone's goal was different. It could be said that they all had their own ulterior motives. Moreover, through lightning detection, Shang Luan had a certain understanding of Zichun. He was actually a descender who was hated by everyone, so it could be seen how disliked he was. However, in his heart, there was a trace of doubt. If Zichun was really just a descender, then why did he know fighting techniques? Or rather, why did he know tremor fighting technique? Everyone knew that descenders could only draw talismans when they came to this world and couldn't use other soul techniques. This had long been the consensus of generations. Could it be that there was a mistake? Was he not targeting Zichun, but the people around Zichun? Was the feeling of hostility from before just deliberately confusing him? For example, the second and third people had clearly disappeared, as if they had lost their qualifications. So why did they suddenly appear again? In fact, many people had doubts in their hearts, but no one questioned the sage heavenly mirror. Even if the appearance of this item made many people dissatisfied, the fairness of the sage heavenly mirror was obvious to all. Chapter 38:46. Compared to last time, the bets this time were a lot more cautious. All the descenders had to start with 2 mountains. It was common knowledge that the descenders who could reach the sacred mountain would definitely be recognized by one of the mountains. In addition, there was also the possibility of obtaining the sacred weapon mountain's recognition. Among them, there were a few spots for everyone to choose from. Zichun's name was at the very front. Zichun started with 2 mountains. His odds were 1 to 30, 3 mountains to 300, and 4 mountains to 3,000. Compared to the last time, the odds were much lower this time. In second place was someone called Lei Gang. His odds were as high as 1 to 300 for 2 mountains, 1 to 3,000 for 3 mountains, and 1 to 30,000 for 4 mountains. In other words, as long as the other party could obtain the recognition of 4 mountains, the odds would be 30,000. Just by buying 1,000 blue crystal coins, the reward would be 30,000. Zichun's gaze swept down and saw a few more names. Among them was Lei Chan. Their odds were extremely high. It seemed that the Sacred Mountain Gambling House valued Zichun very much after obtaining first place this time. That was why they lowered his odds. Among them, there were only a few dozen names that everyone could place their bets on. As for those without names, they could only place their bets on themselves. After looking at the descenders, Zichun saw Shanya. Her odds were 1 to 3 for the first mountain, 1 to 30 for the second mountain, 1 to 300 for the third mountain, and 3 to 3,000 for the fourth mountain. It was clear that the Sacred Mountain Gambling House thought that Shanya's chances of entering the first mountain were very high. Next to Shanya was Lan Guming. Her odds were the same as Shanya's. After all, they were second and third place in the assessment. Their potential was naturally very high. Next was someone called Luotsang. His odds for entering the first mountain were only 2 times, 10 times for the second mountain, and 500 times for the third mountain. In history, no one had successfully obtained the recognition of the 4 mountains. Therefore, no matter how high the odds were, it was only a relatively impressive number for everyone. In the past 1,000 years, no one had been able to enter the 3 mountains. Thus, the high multiplier only made people feel comfortable. On the contrary, there were a lot of blue crystal coins in the first mountain and second mountain, but the multiplier was not high. However, for those who were confident, it was extremely easy for them to earn blue crystal coins from the Holy Mountain Casino. Zichun saw Yue. Despite being recognized by 2 mountains, his multiplier was only 30 times. Chinkai wasn't on it. Then, Zichun saw St. Lewin. St. Lewin was at first mountain, so there was no multiplier at all. Second mountain only had a multiplier of 2, third mountain had a multiplier of 20, and fourth mountain could be ignored. From this, it could be seen that the Holy Mountain Casino did not dare to underestimate Sheng Lewin even if they did not enter the top 30 this time. Sheng Lewin was the only one with such a low multiplier. Looking at the multiplier, Zichun was puzzled. No one was a fool. Without absolute certainty, no one would rashly place a bet on themselves. Those who were strong would naturally be the focus of the bets. Moreover, this was not the same as the previous test. This was a real test. No one dared to hide their strength because if they were not recognized by the sage heavenly mirror, they would be disqualified. Something like what Sheng Lewin had done last time would never happen again. He dared to fool everyone once, but he would never joke about his own future. Yet, the Holy Mountain Casino still dared to offer such a high multiplier. Were they not afraid of losing everything again? Oli came uninvited. When he saw Zichun staring blankly at the information that had just been delivered, he immediately guessed what was on Zichun's mind. He said, "Kid, you really have nothing better to do. Do you think they would do a losing business?" Zichun put down the information in his hand and said, "I know that they would not do a losing business. However, there is obviously a problem. Or is there some kind of conspiracy?" Oli sat across from Zichun and poured himself a glass of water. "This time, there really isn't any conspiracy. We're just giving out some benefits to the participants, that's all. The real big picture will only begin after you have obtained the qualification to take the test. At that time, the stakes will be life and death. People will die in the test?" Zichun was slightly surprised. "What do you think?" Oli curled his lips and said, "There is nothing in this world that can be obtained without taking risks. After obtaining the qualification to take the test and enter the Holy Mountain, you will have to go deeper. There are all kinds of opportunities and dangers inside. Each mountain is divided into 4 levels. The first level is the most ordinary level. Many people are qualified to enter. However, after obtaining the opportunity, you can't take it for free. You will have to pay a huge sum of blue crystal coins. Some even have blue star coins. For example, the 2 holy talisman arts you obtained, a tiger and a python. They are the most ordinary things in the Holy Mountain. In the eyes of the knowledgeable people, they are trash. However, they can be sold for an extremely high price in the outside world. Descenders like you are all rich and overbearing. The things sold to you will naturally not be cheap. The remaining 3 levels are the human, earth, and heaven levels. Once you reach the human level, as long as you can come out alive, you will help the Holy Mountain guard the mountain gate for 500 years for free. Hearing this, Zichun's expression couldn't help but change. He cried out involuntarily, 500 years? At this moment, he couldn't help but want to retreat. He simply couldn't waste 500 years here. After all, he had wasted too much time coming to this world. Oli glanced at Zichun, seemingly dissatisfied with his interruption. If you are lucky enough to enter the earth level and come out alive, you will only need to serve the Holy Mountain for 100 years. It wasn't unacceptable to shorten the time by 400 years. If you are lucky enough to reach the highest level, the heaven level, then you will become an honorary elder of the Holy Mountain. You will receive an elder token from the Holy Mountain and won't need to stay in the Holy Mountain for a day. Zichun heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had to fight for that heaven level. Oli changed the topic and said, however, when the Holy Mountain encounters danger, the Holy Mountain will summon all the elders. At that time, the elders with the token must arrive as soon as possible to provide support. What if they don't come? Zichun asked. Oli said, the token will automatically generate a response and cause the owner to suffer a backlash. It is like a curse. Zichun's expression changed. What if they can't make it? For example, in a special place? For example, in our world, if there is no chance, it is impossible to come here. Oli said, I'm not too sure about this. There should be some restrictions. However, if you really want to know, then go to the Holy Talisman Mountain. That is the headquarters of you Descenders. They should know more than me. Chapter 38:47. There were all kinds of conditions to enter the sacred mountain, but Zichun soon understood. The sacred mountain was a huge treasure trove. Why should it be open to everyone? If you wanted to come here to search for treasures, you would have to pay a price. 500 years of service for the human level was one of the prices. Relatively speaking, the higher you went, the greater your potential and the fewer restrictions you would face. These people were destined to become amazing existences in the future. With so many powerful honorary elders outside, they would be able to provide support in case of trouble. This should be the reason why the Sacred Mountain's reputation never declined. It was clear that the previous test was really to cooperate with the Sacred Mountain Casino, but it was almost ruined. Zichen's heart was filled with anticipation for the real test in a few days. Perhaps this trip to the Sacred Mountain would really bring him some surprises. Just as Zichen received the betting information, the others also knew about the stakes. After the previous incident, everyone was very careful and didn't act so ostentatiously. For example, Shang Luan didn't come out to bet in a high-profile manner. Outside the gambling dens, it was still very lively. There was an endless stream of people placing their bets. Outside the crowd stood the Shishan brothers. They had made a lot of money in the previous test, especially the last 1,000 blue crystal coins, which was a pleasant surprise. But this time, the two brothers were in a bit of a dilemma because they didn't know how to place their bets. As a descender, Zichen couldn't bet on one mountain. Should they bet on two? 3 mountains hadn't appeared for many years, so the brothers didn't even think about 4. Looking at those who placed their bets, even though Zichen's group of 3 took first place last time, there were still very few people paying attention to Zichen. On the other hand, Shang Luan, who didn't even enter the top 30 last time, was still very popular. Big brother, what should we do now? Shishan's younger brother asked. Shishan's older brother obviously didn't expect this and was also in a dilemma. Why don't we ask Sir again? Shishan's younger brother suggested. No need. I believe in Sir Zichen. Shishan's older brother said with certainty, same old rules, bet heavily on 2 mountains and leave some for 3 mountains. 3 mountains? The younger brother looked at the older brother with a questioning look in his eyes. Last time, that Shang Luan deliberately targeted Lord Zichen, and even launched a sneak attack on Lord Zichen during the test. Yet, Lord remained unscathed. He had an extremely high probability of gaining the attention of the 3 mountains. Why wouldn't Lord Zichen, who suppressed him, be able to do the same? Obviously, this was the source of Shishan's confidence. In the past few days, everyone's focus had been on how to place their bets. Zichen had also thought about this problem, but he didn't dwell on it. This time, his goal was the 2 mountains, and he wouldn't think too much about anything else. The door was pushed open, and Lan Hongyi walked in and asked directly, "Why are you looking for us?" Lan Guming, Lan Rue, Noah, Shanya, and the others also came. Obviously, they were also very confused. Isn't it up to the individual to place a bet? Lan Hongyi sat beside Zichen. Pang Chong stood there. This time, Zichen also called him over. Mainly to talk about 2 things. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and now I want to hear your opinions. Zichen raised his head and looked at everyone. Their originally indifferent expressions changed because Zichen was now very serious. What is it? Why are you so serious? Lan Hongyi asked, puzzled. First, I've decided to give the Jade-Eye Jade Fire Beast to Noah. Zichen had obtained the Jade-Eye Jade Fire Beast after defeating Zichen. Although it had been following Zichen all this time, Zichen hadn't made it recognize him as its master. Obtaining a Jade-Eye Jade Fire Beast was absolute qualification to enter a mountain. If it stayed by Zichen's side, perhaps it could enter Sacred Beast Mountain. Everyone had always thought that Zichen would keep the Jade-Eye Jade Fire Beast by his side. They didn't expect him to say that he wanted to give it to Noah at this time. That's yours. You can give it to whoever you want, Lan Hongyi said, clearly not caring. Noah said, this isn't appropriate, right? If you give it to me, I can only enter a mountain at most. The stakes are so small. If it stays with you, it can be multiplied many times. Zichen didn't answer Noah's words and continued. Since no one has any objections, it's settled. The second thing is the Blood Crow King's robe. I'll give it to Big Brother Pang Chong. Me? Pang Chong was stunned when he heard that. He didn't expect there to be a matter for him here. That robe was the Blood Crow King's life-saving item. Its grade was very high, and could be considered priceless. I've looked at it carefully. The Blood Crow King's cultivation technique seems to have a certain relationship with this robe. Now, I'm giving it to you as karma from back then. As for how to use it, it's all up to you, Big Brother Pang Chong. Zichun directly took out the blood-red robe and placed it on the table in front of him. Pang Chang's expression changed again. Is there anything else? Lan Hongyi asked. No. Zichun shook his head. Shanya, let's go shopping. Lan Hongyi grabbed Shanya and said at the same time, Little Mute, let's go too. The three women left. Lan Rui glanced at Zichun and also left the room. Noah left as well. Only Zichun and Pang Chong were left in the room. Why are you giving it to me? Pang Chong looked at Zichun and asked. I feel that good people should always be rewarded. Zichun said, This blood-red robe belongs to you. If you feel sorry, then I hope that in the future, you can let more good people be rewarded. Once upon a time, Pang Chang's father, because of a moment of kindness, caused the destruction of the caravan, and he himself lost his cultivation. Although Pang Chong had never talked about his father's situation, he clearly did not teach Pang Chong to be a heartless person. His kindness ought to be repaid, though it may have come a little late. Zichun hoped that this robe was like a seed, buried in Pang Chang's heart, waiting for it to grow little by little. Then, like the shade of a tree, it would bring coolness to more kind people. Although this was not his world, he still hoped that this world would become as good as possible. Pang Chong saluted Zichun with his fists and then took the robe. Don't be in a hurry to leave. It's not wrong to be a good person, but it's actually better to be a rich good person. Zichun's voice sounded in Pang Chang's ears. Pang Chong nodded. Obviously, Zichun was very confident about entering the holy mountain this time. So as long as he bet on Zichun, he would definitely make a profit. Lan Hongyi really did take Shanya and Lan Guming to the streets, but the three of them made some changes. Otherwise, with Lan Guming and Shanya's rankings, it would definitely cause a sensation. Don't you think that Zichun is a little strange today? Why did he suddenly split up? Lan Guming said, Maybe it's time to part. Chapter 38-48. Separate? What do you mean? Lan Hongyi turned to look at Shanya. Even Lan Guming's eyes were filled with doubt. Everything was fine. Why would they separate? Shanya said expressionlessly, Zichun came to this world to find something. Perhaps that thing is on the sacred mountain. Everyone knew that Zichun was a descender. Although they knew that he would eventually leave, they didn't expect it to be so soon. Lan Hongyi, who was still in the mood to shop, instantly lost interest. The time of separation was coming so soon. Time passed day by day. The day of the examination was getting closer and closer. Zichun found that Lan Hongyi came to him more often than usual. And every time she spoke, there seemed to be a hidden meaning in her words. This made Zichun a little confused. He didn't know what she wanted to say. Hey, Zichun, let me ask you a question, Lan Hongyi suddenly said when she came to Zichun 2 days before the examination. Zichun glanced at her. Speak. What did you come to our world to find? Lan Hongyi asked. A cultivation method, Zichun said. What kind of cultivation method is it that made you cross realms to come here? A unique cultivation method. It's very important. I'm the only one who knows it. I learned a fragment. This time, I came to find the second part. Are there many parts of that cultivation method? I'm not sure. Are you sure it's on the sacred mountain? I'm not sure. Then what if you can't find it this time? If I can't find it, I'll keep looking. You should know the rules of the sacred mountain, right? At different levels, there will be different requirements. I know, so I have to find a way to reach the highest level. That way, I can leave and look for it elsewhere. Lan Guming nodded and turned to leave. Zichun, on the other hand, looked at him in surprise. Why did he ask this question out of the blue? Lan Hongyi was in a good mood. Today, she finally plucked up the courage to ask this question. As long as Zichun couldn't find the cultivation method, he wouldn't leave. Apart from that, as long as she found a way to prevent Zichun from reaching the highest level, he wouldn't be able to leave. She began to ponder in her heart. Should she use some methods? She was a little absent-minded and almost bumped into someone. When she looked up, she saw Lan Rui. You're in a good mood. Do you have something to share? Lan Rui smiled. It's none of your business. Lan Hongyi glanced at Lan Rue. She walked around him. Lan Rue immediately followed. Why are you following me? Someone from my family came to deliver something, and I also have a few words to say to you. Lan Rue came to Lan Hongyi's room. Lan Hongyi said impatiently, if you have something to say it quickly. I am very busy recently. No matter what the outcome is this time, we have to go back, said Lan Rue. Go back? Lan Hongyi didn't understand. What do you mean? This place is too far away from the Lan family. It's the furthest we can go. No matter where Zichen goes, we can only go back. Lan Rue was very straightforward this time. Lan Hongyi's face paled slightly. What do you mean? Have you forgotten why we set out? If we go back, what about Little Mute? Lan Rue said, that's your own business. Or rather, it's Yichen's business. It has nothing to do with us. Little Mute is our friend. How can you say that it has nothing to do with us? Lan Hongyi said unhappily, have you never cared about Little Mute's life? That's indeed not something we should worry about. Don't you see Zichen's attitude? Lan Rue asked. What's Zichen's attitude? Lan Hongyi was startled. He gave the blue-eyed jade fire beast to Noah and gave the robe to Pangchong. On the surface, it looks like he wants the two of them to become stronger, but on the other hand, he wants to separate. Shanya had said the same thing. However, according to Lan Hongyi's insinuations, Zichen shouldn't be leaving for the time being. As long as she did something, Zichen wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Lan Rue continued, there will only be two results. The first is that Zichen leaves, and Shanya takes ferry on the road to the north. The second is that the three of them go together to the north. But no matter what the result is, there won't be us, Noah, or Pangchong. Lan Rue looked out the window and said, they are different from us. Their future is still very far away, but we are almost fixed. I'm not going back. Lan Hongyi shook her head. At this moment, her eyes were filled with determination. Lan Rue didn't continue to persuade his sister. Instead, he put down something that the family had brought this time. It could help them smoothly enter the sacred mountain. Lan Rue turned around and left. In truth, this wasn't the fate he wanted. However, as the future successor of the Lan family, he could only go so far. He believed that Zichen had already seen through this and was prepared to part ways in advance. Time passed, and the betting was nearing its end. Zichen mainly bet on himself entering the second mountain. Of course, it wasn't impossible for him to enter the third mountain. He was clearly different from the other descenders. Many people had come to the sacred mountain city to participate in the assessment. Moreover, as the assessment neared, Zichen realized that the 1,000 quotas were just empty words. Now, as long as you could take out a certain amount of blue crystal coins, you would be granted the right to participate in the assessment. Of course, whether you could pass or not was another matter. Almost all the people who participated last time had obtained the right to participate. Lan Rue also asked around and found out that the number of people participating in the assessment this time had exceeded 20,000. Only 1,000 of them didn't need to pay the blue crystal coins. The rest of them had to buy their quotas. The sacred mountain took this opportunity to make a fortune. On the day of the assessment, everyone walked out of their rooms and headed out of the sacred mountain city. A dense crowd gathered outside the sacred mountain. Ahead of them was a thick fog. Everyone was waiting in groups of 3 to 5, chatting and laughing. With the arrival of Zichen's group, many people cast their gazes towards them. The scene of Zichen's group obtaining the top 3 was still vivid in many people's minds. Of course, there was no lack of people with cold and unfriendly gazes. Zichen didn't care about them. At this time, no one stepped forward to say a few harsh words because there was no need to. They didn't have to wait for too long. In front of them, the thick fog rolled. The existence called Saint Radius that Zichen saw last time appeared again. The sacred heavenly mirror has opened. The assessment begins. Chapter 3849. Last time, it was a test. This time, it was a test. A real test. And this time, the sage heavenly mirror had the final say. If it allowed you to pass, you would enter the sacred mountain. Otherwise, you would be disqualified. Once again, everyone took out their new tokens. Just like the last time, the tokens began to emit light, enveloping everyone. In the next moment, everyone entered the sage, heavenly mirror again. In the sacred mountain city, everyone held their breaths as they nervously looked at the light screens that appeared one after another. Unlike last time, the outcome of this test would be revealed soon. As the top three in the previous test, Ziqian, Shanya, and Lan Guming all had their own light screens for everyone to watch. However, very few people paid attention to it. At this time, everyone's attention was on the people they were betting on. After Ziqian entered the sage, heavenly mirror again, he felt a ray of light fall from the sky and fall on his body. It was like a prying light that could see all his secrets. His expression was guarded as he looked around vigilantly. No one was fighting, because this test was not a battle. A short moment later, a series of exclamations rang out, following which, everyone's gazes turned towards the source of the sound. A person was flying in the air, or rather, the person was being held up by a ray of light. Zichun had tried before, and this was a no-fly zone. So, why was the person flying now? Soon, Zichun knew the answer. Just as the person was flying, a mountain that seemed to have shrunk many times appeared in front of the person and slowly rotated around his body. It represented a mountain. Exclamations continued. Obviously, the person had been recognized by the sacred mountain. In the sagely mountain city, cries of surprise rang out as well. This time, there were also cheers. Zichun looked at the mountain and saw that it was constantly changing. Sometimes it would transform into a shape, and sometimes it would become a weapon. This meant that the person had been recognized by the sacred weapon mountain. Who knew that right at this moment, some unusual fluctuations appeared in the surroundings of the other party. Another mountain peak appeared, and the moment this mountain peak appeared, the crowd heard a beastly roar. Then, the person's body rose again. An uproar broke out again. This meant that the other party had not only received the recognition of one mountain, but two. The second was the sacred beast mountain. The first existence that appeared was one that was acknowledged by the two mountains. This was naturally a good sign and beginning. Zichun was also very surprised. There shouldn't be many of such existences. Right at this moment, Zichun suddenly felt a cold gaze shoot down from the sky. It was filled with obvious hostility. Sensing this hostility, Zichun carefully looked at that person, and his expression changed slightly. So it was Yue, no wonder. Yue had obtained the approval of the two mountains, and the existence of the outside world who had placed their bets on you. He was shouting his name excitedly. After Yue, one existence after another obtained the qualifications, their figures rising into the air. Zichun discovered that if he received the approval of one mountain, his body would grow 1,000 feet. If he received the approval of two mountains, it would be 200 feet. At this moment, cries of surprise rang out incessantly from all around. Some people were cheering, while others were worried. Those who were happy were naturally those who had obtained the qualifications to be recognized. Exclamations of surprise finally rang out beside Zichun. It was Noah. He brought the emerald-eye jade fire beast with him. At this moment, the light enveloped the man and the beast, and their figures rose 1,000 feet into the air. The approval of one mountain. It was indeed the sacred beast mountain. This opportunity was given by Zichun. Of course, it could also be said that Chunkai gave it to him for free. At this moment, in another direction, another person rose into the air. It was Chunkai. He didn't have any exotic beasts beside him, but he had also obtained the approval of the sacred beast mountain. Look over there. Pangchong noticed Chunkai and immediately said. Zichun turned around and found that the other party had only received one mountain, and there were no exotic beasts beside him. His expression couldn't help but change. He looked up at the sky. Could it be that the sage heavenly mirror was still faking at this stage? Zichun, we'll go first. Lan Rui's voice sounded, and his figure rose up. Then, Lan Hongyi also flew into the air. The two reached 1,000 feet at the same time, and the sacred mountain that appeared was also the sacred weapon mountain. At this moment, a second mountain appeared around Lan Rui, and his figure rose 1,000 feet into the air again. The approval of two mountains. This was also the second existence to obtain the approval of two mountains after Yue. However, the commotion caused by Lan Rui was much greater than Yue's. This was because Lan Rue was only in the sole true realm, but he could obtain the approval of 2 mountains. How amazing was this? During this period, there were constantly people rising into the air. Among these people were Lei Xian and other descenders. Almost all of these people had obtained the approval of 1 mountain. The mountains surrounding them were mountains that could turn into talismans at any time. After Lan Rue and Lan Hongyi obtained the qualifications, Shanya, who was next to Zichun, also soared into the sky. Clearly, she had also obtained the qualifications. 2 mountains. There were exclamations all around. Clearly, they didn't expect that this beautiful woman who hadn't received much attention would have such potential. The Sacred Weapon Mountain and the Sacred Soul Mountain. It's just 2 mountains. At this moment, a cold voice sounded. This voice came from Shang Luan. He had always been the target of the most attention. Even if there was an upset last time, it was still the same this time. As the cold voice sounded, his figure rose into the air. In the Sagely Mountain City, everyone's face was filled with anticipation. When he reached 1,000 feet, Shang Luan's figure paused slightly. In the next moment, a second mountain appeared. His figure rose into the air again, reaching a height of 200 feet. Could it be that he also had 2 mountains? Just as everyone had their suspicions, the third mountain peak appeared. Exclamations accompanied by uproar rose and fell continuously. The Sagely Mountain City was already filled with cheers. 3 mountains. Just as the rumors said, Shang Luan had obtained the approval of 3 mountains this time. Those who had placed heavy bets on Shang Luan were naturally reaping huge profits. Standing at the highest point, Shang Luan stood alone. He looked down at Zichun with a proud face and mocked, "Don't leave with your tail between your legs when you don't even have the qualifications to get 1 mountain." At this moment, Lan Guming's figure rose into the air. As expected, she reached a height of 1,000 feet. Then, a second mountain appeared, and her figure reached a height of 200 feet. Just as everyone thought that this was her limit, a third mountain appeared. Then, she rose into the air again, standing at the same height as Shang Luan. This scene happened extremely quickly. Before the mocking smile on Shang Luan's face disappeared, it was already frozen. Those gazes, which had previously landed on Shang Luan, all turned to look at Lan Guming. Her dress fluttered in the air. With her peerless beauty, she looked like a fairy. Chapter 3850. Shang Luan was very famous. Everyone felt that it was reasonable for him to be recognized by the 3 mountains. The entire city was filled with cheers. Everyone who had bet on Shang Luan had made a huge profit. However, no one expected that in just a short moment, another person would stand at the same height as Shang Luan. What did this mean? It meant that her talent was not inferior to Shang Luan's. It meant that she had obtained the recognition of the 3 mountains and could choose which one she wanted to go to first. Those who had participated in the previous bet naturally recognized the person in the sky. Lan Guming, the 3rd place last time. Who would have thought that she would amaze the world again? For a moment, the shock brought by Shang Luan was immediately replaced by Lan Guming. Many people felt regret. If they had bet on her at that time, they would have made a huge profit this time. At the same time, doubt appeared in everyone's heart. If Lan Guming could reach such a height, then what about Zichun, who had obtained 1st place last time? After all, 2 of the top 3 had obtained good results. Many people began to pay attention to Zichun. However, the most nervous ones were of course the Shishan brothers. Due to their trust in Zichun, they had placed a huge bet on Zichun this time. If Zichun could not obtain the recognition of the 2 mountains, then it would be very difficult for them to leave this city alive. Under the gazes of thousands of people, Zichun's figure began to rise into the sky. This was not surprising because he was a descender. If he could not obtain the recognition of 1 mountain, then it would be strange. The entire city fell into silence. Everyone's eyes followed Zichun as he rose into the sky. A short distance of 100 feet seemed extremely far to everyone. Compared to the nervousness of the others, Zichun's mood was still calm. 100 feet had passed. At this moment, he had become the center of attention. Shang Luan snorted in dissatisfaction. Other existences who had a grudge against Zichun coldly watched this scene. Someone laughed. It was the descenders. Zichen had also obtained the recognition. Now, they had a way to kill him. Wang. Under everyone's gaze, a ripple appeared around Zichen's body. Then, a shrunken mountain appeared. This was the recognition of the two mountains. Cries of surprise rang out. After all, anyone who could obtain the recognition of the two mountains was a genius. The second mountain was the Sacred Beast Mountain. Outside the gambling house, the Shishan brothers and the others heaved a huge sigh of relief. At least their lives were saved. The clamor only lasted for a moment before the surroundings became quiet again. Everyone wanted to know how far Zicheng could go. Was two mountains the limit? Or could it be that his talent was also extremely high, and he was able to obtain the recognition of the three mountains? Zicheng had reached a height of 200 feet, and this place was already very conspicuous. This was not the mountain that Zicheng wanted. He was originally calm, but now he was nervous. Wang. Another trembling sound was heard, and a third mountain peak appeared. The quiet surroundings were no longer quiet. An uproar broke out once again. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. In the past, there was not even a single three mountains. Two mountains were enough to cause a commotion. Who would have thought that there would be three of them this time? This was definitely a grand occasion. A grand occasion rarely seen in hundreds of years. Good. In the midst of the uproar, an excited roar suddenly rang out. It was Shishan's younger brother. Zicheng had successfully obtained the recognition of the three mountains. It was equivalent to their huge bet being repaid. This was the real deal. Many people around looked at Shishan's younger brother. He said excitedly, "Did you see that? That's Lord Zicheng. We bet on Lord Zicheng." The people around immediately became envious. At this moment, Zicheng was already standing at a height of 300 feet. Everyone thought that this was the end. Zicheng was not in a good mood because this was the Sacred Weapon Mountain and not the Sacred Soul Mountain that he wanted. The second part of the soul-devouring technique was not on the Sacred Talisman Mountain, so it might be on the Sacred Soul Mountain. However, he had only obtained the recognition of the Sacred Talisman Mountain. Looking at Zicheng, who had stopped at 300 feet, Shang Luan coldly snorted and said, "If you did not have the unique identity of a descender, you would only be on the second mountain. Therefore, in my eyes, you are nothing. You are not worthy to stand side by side with me." Shang Luan's voice was very cold and loud. Not only did the participants hear it, but the people of the Sacred Mountain City also heard it clearly. Immediately, many people nodded because Shang Luan was speaking the truth. All the descenders who came here would definitely enter the first mountain due to their identity. Although Zicheng had entered the three mountains, his potential was at most the same as those who had entered the second mountain. Hearing Shang Luan's words, everyone no longer looked at Zicheng with shock. It was as if he really did not deserve to stand at the same height as Shang Luan. Zicheng did not respond because he did not care about this. What he cared about was the Sacred Soul Mountain. At this moment, another tremor sounded. The fourth mountain appeared around Zicheng. Zicheng, who had stopped at 300 feet, rose again and soared into the sky. At this moment, there was no exclamation or uproar. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at the sky as if they had been petrified. For mountains, this had never happened before. Because of the laws of heaven and earth, those who could obtain the recognition of the three mountains were already top geniuses. For example, although descenders could obtain the recognition of the Sacred Talisman Mountain, they could never obtain the recognition of the Sacred Soul Mountain because they could not use soul techniques. By the same logic, they could never enter the Sacred Talisman Mountain because they could not use the Sacred Talisman. Historically, those who entered the Sacred Talisman Mountain were all descenders. But today, this rule was broken. Zicheng was surrounded by four mountains. They were the Sacred Talisman, Sacred Beast, Sacred Soul, and Sacred Weapon. They were all present. This way of breaking the rules shocked everyone to the point that they were petrified. Even when Zicheng was standing at the 4,000-foot position, the crowd still had not reacted. The surroundings were still silent. At this moment, Zicheng finally relaxed. He looked down at Shang Luan and said, "What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. Do you think I'm not qualified to be on the same level as you?" "Actually, I agree with what you said, because you're right." The two of them were indeed not on the same level. This was because Zicheng had obtained the recognition of the four mountains and broke the rules of the world. Compared to this, what was the recognition of the three mountains? Chapter 38:51. This was the first time in history that someone had achieved 4 mountains. At this moment, Ziqian had made history and broken the rules. Sheng Luan's expression was extremely ugly. Compared to Ziqian, who could break the rules, his mere 3 mountains potential was simply incomparable to Ziqian's. At this moment, Ziqian's talent surpassed everyone else in the world. In the sagely mountain city, Shishan, who had been suppressing his emotions all this time, couldn't help but roar. He had suddenly thought of betting 1,000 blue crystal coins on Ziqian's 4 mountains, which was equivalent to the price of a bottle of Drunken Immortal. At that time, his thoughts were simple. If Ziqian succeeded, he wouldn't care about the 1,000 blue crystal coins. If he failed, the 1,000 blue crystal coins would be of no use to him. He didn't expect that his unintentional action would actually pay off. Shishan was very excited. It seemed that his luck had changed ever since he met Ziqian. While the city was in shock, the higher-ups of the Sagely Mountain used a unique method to communicate with the Sagely Heavenly Mirror. They asked if it had made a mistake, but they didn't get any response. No response was the best response they could get. At this point, the test was over. All those who had been qualified had left the ground and were suspended in the air by the power of the Sagely Heavenly Mirror. As for the others, they had been disqualified. Pangchong was one of them. He was the only one among Ziqian's group who had not been recognized by the Sagely Mountain. The others are eliminated. An indifferent voice sounded in the air. It was emotionless. Light began to flicker, and the figures disappeared one after another. Pangchong cupped his fists at the sky and disappeared in the next moment. It was obvious that they had lost the opportunity to enter the Sagely Heavenly Mirror. They were no longer fated to enter the Sagely Mountain. You may enter the Sagely Mountain. As soon as the voice was heard, the mountain peaks that were revolving around the crowd began to change and turned into tunnels one after another. A mountain turned into a passage. Besides Ziqian, there were a total of 4 tunnels. Right now, he could choose one to join. As for the other 3 paths, they would not disappear. They would stay where they were. In other words, Ziqian, who was recognized by all 4 mountains, could enter the sacred mountain a total of 4 times. He could enter a different sacred mountain once. Before entering, Ziqian lowered his head and glanced at them, signaling them to be careful with his eyes. His first destination was the Saint Talisman Mountain. For the majority of the people, there were not many opportunities for them to choose. Hence, they did not find it difficult to make a choice. Hence, when the passageway appeared, they walked in. Lan Guming and the others were about to make their choice. After the 2 parties looked at each other, she left first. Ziqian walked into the Saint Talisman Mountain. At the same time, in the various gambling dens that had been closed, bets were reopened. This time, they were betting on the life and death of those who entered the Holy Mountain, as well as the number of steps they would take. The bets this time had nothing to do with Ziqian and the rest of the participants. Ziqian arrived at the Saint Talisman Mountain. In front of him was not a mountain, but a dense forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Ancient trees towered into the sky. The surroundings were quiet. There was no sound, not even the sound of the wind or the chirping of birds. At this moment, in the sacred mountain city, many people's gazes fell on Ziqian. This was because not long ago, this area was purged with ulterior motives. Otherwise, it would not be so quiet. Originally, the odds for Ziqian to successfully pass this level were 1-1-5. Because of the previous incident, it was now 2-1. After all, as someone who was recognized by all 4 mountains, the sacred mountain gambling den had already recognized Ziqian's strength. Hence, the odds were getting lower and lower. The Shishan brothers did not hesitate to bet that Ziqian could make it to the next level. They had already exchanged all their bets for the previous assessment. From the respectful attitude of the people in the gambling den towards the brothers, it could be seen that the 2 were already rich. Ziqian walked forward aimlessly. As he walked through the forest, he did not encounter any threats. This was very different from what Oli had said about dangers everywhere. After walking for about 15 minutes, Ziqian still did not encounter anything. A trace of doubt appeared on his face. This situation was obviously not right. Suddenly, A weak fluctuation came from not far away. Zichen immediately turned his head and saw a sacred talisman fly into the air and then explode. Countless rays of light bloomed and powerful waves of chi spread in all directions. The ancient trees in the forest began to break and danced wildly in all directions. The commotion was huge. The previously quiet surroundings were suddenly filled with powerful auras. The first thing that entered Zichen's eyes was a tall silver wolf. Its eyes were like lightning, staring at Zichen. In the other direction of the silver wolf, black clouds rolled in the sky. Lightning snakes swam in the clouds, and under the lightning snakes, a giant python appeared. Sky Thunder Python. With a deafening roar, a black tiger appeared in his field of vision. One after another, powerful beasts appeared in Zichen's field of vision. Powerful auras filled the air, causing sand and rocks to fly and leaves to dance wildly. He was surrounded. He was the first person to be besieged among all those who had entered the sacred mountain. Moreover, these were not beasts at all. They were all manifested by the sacred talisman art. Looking at these beasts, Zichen could only fight. A light flashed in front of him, and the sacred talisman brush appeared. Its name was unfathomable. At this moment, the sacred talisman brush was emitting a faint light. Zichen held the brush and descended. It was the Sky Thunder Python. Dark clouds gathered above his head, and lightning flashed from time to time. Countless soul power appeared from all directions and gathered in front of Zichen. Perhaps it was because he was in the sacred mountain, but Zichen felt that the Sky Thunder Python condensed faster and its power seemed to be stronger. As the sacred talisman was completed, a powerful aura circulated and a giant python more than 200 feet long floated in the air. Compared to the Sky Thunder Python in front of him, not only was it larger, but its power was also stronger. When the Sky Thunder Python appeared, Zichen quickly retreated. The Sky Thunder Python that belonged to him charged towards the enemy. When the exotic beasts saw the Sky Thunder Python, they all abandoned Zichen and surrounded the Sky Thunder Python to kill it. Zichen avoided the battlefield and flew forward. Now that the danger had appeared, he did not care much. As for why he did not use his full strength to defeat the beasts here, it was not because he was afraid of consumption, but because he did not want to waste time. Because the things here were useless to him. After 10 breaths of time, the sound of violent energy came from behind. It was the Sky Thunder Python that Zichen had summoned. Facing the encirclement, it had dissipated. The powerful shockwave had also destroyed a nearby silver wolf. The silver wolf that had dissipated left behind a jade slip. It was the sacred talisman art to summon the silver wolf. Zichen saw it, but he did not care and continued forward.